Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to a new season, the 2021 season of the ADAC GT Masters Esports Championship here on RaceRoom. Of course, we're powered by NBW Mobility Plus. My name is Connery Maddock. I'll be joined by my one and only co-commentator, Mr. Paul Smith, throughout this season. Paul, welcome to the commentary booth. Welcome to the series as well. This is going to be your first race commentating on this series, but I know you've done your homework behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really enthused and excited about calling this series. Some of the best sim racers in the world we're going to be seeing out there. 32 drivers on the grid. Oschersleben, we'll get onto that in a bit because it is going to be all on from the get-go.
Yeah, there is absolutely going to be all on, like you said, but we have a little bit of an explainer, just so if you're new to the format, because there has been format changes since last season. We're going to have a couple more races than you expected, and so we have a little bit of an explainer video to take you through exactly what the circumstances are for this season of 2021 of the ADAC GT Masters Esports Championship. Hello everyone and welcome to the 2021 ADAC GT Masters Esports season. Welcome to the next level of esports racing. 7 events across 16 races for this 2021 season. An official GT3 series with 28 permanent drivers and 4 guest drivers every single race. All competing for a prize pool of €100,000. We have a support series this time featuring GT4 cars with 32 drivers that have qualified through the leaderboards the week leading up to the event. The top 3 in that race will win a wild card for the main race in the GT3 season. The points are also heavily weighted towards the very top couple of positions to really encourage the drivers to go for those top spots. The driver with the most points, of course, at the end of the season will be crowned our 2021 ADAC GT Masters Esports champion. We have 2 races on every single race day for GT3s, but of course we are split up by that GT4 race right in the middle. We head to Oschersleben for round number 1. We go through the season visiting at most of the most well-known circuits in the real-life ADAC GT Masters season. Make sure you join us for the next level of racing. The next level of esports racing, indeed, as this season goes from strength to strength. This championship goes from strength to strength. Of course, we have an incredibly skilled field here today, and for the rest of the competition, the prize pool has been stepped up just that little bit more as well, Paul. It's absolutely brilliant to see, the continued support that this series has.
Yeah, the competition just keeps on getting stronger and stronger, and as you say, that prize pool just getting moved up that bit, gives those drivers a bit more of an incentive to really push to the limit and then some. So we're going to see some tremendous racing. There's no shadow of a doubt of that. And yeah, as I said earlier, 32 drivers on the grid, 28 permanent drivers, as we mentioned in that package there. Those guest drivers, though, don't write them out. They may be qualifying each and every time, but they could throw a little surprise, little wrench in the works there.
Yeah, there could be a wild card that does particularly well in the races as well. They have a good day, they're able to make some good progress throughout the field, and that just kind of shines a spotlight on some of the drivers that perhaps weren't quite good enough to be able to work their way through the shootout process, to be able to qualify themselves into this season. We had a very, very competitive shootout process. I had the pleasure of covering that for you just a month or 2 ago. But here we are in the main season, and of course we went over it slightly in the video, but the format changes for this season are quite interesting. We will have a 20-minute sprint race here for the first round for the GT3s, which is the main championship. Then we will have a endurance race of 40 minutes where there is that one mandatory stop. We also have a GT4 support race in between those 2 races where the top 3 will be given wildcard spots to the main race or the endurance race of the GT3 session. So yeah, there's certainly a lot to play for here on every single race day.
Yeah, these drivers, as you say, not just in the sprint and endurance race in the GT3s. By the way, sprint racing in GT3s, you get some unbelievable racing in that's for sure. But then you've got that GT4 championship with that little carrot just dangling in front of the drivers as well. So, this is I'm really excited for this championship. I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't wait either, and I tell you who can't wait either. The drivers. Let's take a look at them as they are coming into this season. There they are. Well, those are 16 of them. We got 16 on another page, but Jack Heathley, Christopher Högfeldt, Nesta Garcia in particular is going to be looking to have an absolutely mega season this time around, given he lost out by a handful of points in the final round of the season last time out to now back-to-back champion Moritz Lohner. You've got familiar names in the form of Tim Yarshall, Ben Spanky, Jacob Brzezinski, Jojo Baldy. If you're familiar with RaceRoom Esports, then those names will not be unfamiliar to you. There's Moritz Lohner there, 8th on our list. He is the defending champion 2 years in a row. And then you can have a look at our second page of entrants here. A couple of drivers making their first appearances, of course, and you've got those that have also gotten themselves qualified into this as well. So lots of representation up and down the field. Of course, vast majority coming from Germany, but that's a given, seeing how the series is primarily German in the real world. But some good international representation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll look at someone like Thibaut Casabon for R8G Esports. Yeah, he is a talented driver who I've always enjoyed watching him. Isaac Price, a little bit of an outlier there. One of the just a couple of privateers out there on the grid here. So not got that big group that's behind them, that team behind them. They're on it on their own, and they could be finding themselves in some interesting situations if they've got various teammates working against them. So, keep an eye out for that. Yeah, definitely. There is so much talent on the grid here in this championship. And, Moritz Lohner, what can you say about him? He's the reigning champion. He's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders for this season because he's got to back that up once again. He'll be setting himself the goal of he wants to win again. But everybody else, he's got a big bullseye on him. They're going for him.
He's certainly the man to beat. He won last season without winning any race. It was always second place, third place, fourth place. He didn't drop out the top 6 at any point over the course of the last season. And that's, consistency means prizes here. You don't have to be winning races here and there, then have poor performances elsewhere. You really need that consistent season in the books to be able to do well in terms of the championship order. But where are we going then for this championship in terms of the racetracks that we will be visiting? There they are up on screen. We'll be here in Oschersleben for our first round. Then we'll be heading to the Red Bull Ring, Spielberg. You've got Zandvoort there for round number 3, the Nürburgring for round number 4, Lausitz Ring and Sachsen Ring. Then we get our final round, the grand finale, which will also be a double header as well. That will be round number 7 at Hockenheim. So, again, like I said in the introduction video and the explainer video, of course, the circuit's very famous for their for them being featured in the real life series as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Red Bull Ring is one of my personal favourite tracks to be racing on. I can't wait for that round. And Hockenheim, it always throws up some surprises there around that track. So we could be having a champion decided on that final day. Let's hope that we get a champion decided on that final day, not earlier than that. But with it only being 7 rounds of this championship, it means that you've got to make every race and every single race matter in this championship. So definitely those drivers who are wanting to win the championship, they need to be consistent, like Moritz was last season. Got to have that consistency. I always think back in the real world of Keke Rosberg winning the Formula 1 World Championship. He only won 1 race that whole year. Didn't matter. He was consistent, got himself points, and that's what wins you prizes.
So speaking of Moritz Lohner then, he's prepared a track guide for us to see exactly how consistent he can be around Oschersleben. Let's take a look.
Hello everyone and welcome to the first track presentation of the ADAC GT Masters Esports Championship at Oschersleben. The first turn is quite fast, you have to hit the curb on the inside to then have a straight line braking zone into turn 2. Let your car slide to the very outside of the track and then cut back and work for the exit of track presentation. Approaching turn 2, you brake very early inside of the corner, and it's not really double apex, you just stay there and get early on power because you have a banking on the outside of the corner and you can use that for early acceleration. For the triple left-hander, it's quite important that you have the perfect entry speed into the turn, because you have to hit all the 3 apexes for the perfect speed throughout the section. And then a fast transition into 180 degrees right with a double apex. The chicane is pretty much a straight line, but all the bumps can be used to position your car for the next right-hander and have a really good speed onto the back straight. Approaching both apexes of the right and left-hander, those will give you rotation and it will help you pick up the speed earlier. A quick right-hander as the penultimate turn of the lap, you need a very precise line to go fast through there. And for the last turn, go in early, try to hit the curb on the inside a little bit for rotation and pick up the speed early, because this is the longest straight of the circuit. And this was a guided lap at the very technical track of Oschersleben.
Well, thank you very much, Moritz Lohner, our defending champion there, just taking us through a lap of this fantastic circuit, Oschersleben, as we do have qualifying underway now here. It feels like it's been a very long time since the end of the 2020 season, but we are back here for 2021, and well, drivers just getting their outlaps sorted right now, but soon we'll get some fast times in and we'll see where everything stacks up, at least in terms of both driver order and how strong each driver is, and also the balance of performance as well.
Yeah, balance of performance is always a keenly discussed topic in the world of GT3 racing, that's for sure. And these drivers will be hoping that we've got a pretty strong balance of performance here. There goes Lohner across the line, your reigning champion. Probably the first of the drivers who have stepped lap times up there on your standings so far. But as Moritz said in his track guide there, it's a very technical track, 3.6 kilometers. It's going to be tricky to overtake around here, so qualifying is key for this race.
Absolutely, it's the track position just so crucial. Like you mentioned at this circuit, you can quite easily defend coming down into a lot of these corners. Yes, you got this run all the way down in towards turn number 1 across the pit straight, but you kind of have to be towards the outside to really get any move done there, because the track switches back on you so quickly for turn number 2. So you do have to sort of plan your moves out, and it's just so easy for that car that's trying to defend just sit on the outside there, just allow you down the inside a bit for turn 1, but they've got a long right-hander afterwards where they can just hold on to position.
Yeah, it's you see, you don't know whether pole is an advantage or disadvantage, really, with the way that the track is designed here. Thankfully, we're not using the old tight entry into turn 1, which caused various issues in the past, shall we say. Everybody knows the famous video of John Clellan commentating his thoughts of the track design. But yeah, thankfully we've got that open sweeping left-hander, so it's quite a fast first corner. They've really got to get onto the anchors, get it slowed down for the right-hander around Hotel. So definitely we're going to see, there may be some shenanigans there. We'll have to see how it all pans out. That sprint race, you need to make moves quick in that one to really move up the field.
Marco Pajic with a good lap that we just saw. Of course, there were a couple of drivers that failed to get their first flying laps in. That's not too much of an issue, although drivers would prefer to get that early fast lap in just to have a banker, just to have a baseline to build up off of deeper in towards the qualifying session, because the last thing you want, Paul, is to find yourself still without a lap time being set in the final couple of minutes of qualifying.
Yeah, getting that early lap time in, it just settles yourself down and it allows you the opportunity then to really attack a second time. I mean, traffic is a key thing around here as well, so it may be that drivers have caught traffic and compromised their laps there. So, yeah, Shell, we're on board with then through the left-hander at Hasserode. Comes out the corner, car in front, getting out the way, very courteous of him. And then into the quick left-hand, a little dab of brakes there, dragging the brake through the corner. It's a triple apex corner, and you have to really get the car slowed down for the right-hander here onto the power, using the curbs. Use all the curbs here through the right, left, and then right, slow it down on the final part of it to carry the speed out the corner down the back straight here. So looking so good so far. The Arshal and his Bentley. This is one of the more favoured cars on the grid here this season, Conrad.
Yeah, it does seem to be the case, at least in terms of the popularity, but that looks like an abandoned lap there from the Arshal.
Yeah.
He must have had an off-track somewhere, invalidated his lap, and he has to get cycled, well, just lets a bit of faster traffic through to complete their laps. But Yarshel is the only driver yet to set himself a lap time. We've got 32 drivers out there, of course, but Yarshel is taking his sweet time in terms of getting his lap on the board. There's been a bit of movement right at the very front, though. Moritz Lohner currently leads here in qualifying. Go on, Paul.
Well, look at the times between second and fourth. There's 0.06 of a second covering the three of them. Brzezinski and Keithley both on an equal time there. So it shows how incredibly tight and close this championship is. In qualifying straight away, we've got two drivers sharing a time there.
Yeah, both 0.187 seconds behind Moritz Lohner's provisional pole sitting time at the moment. So, well, if you wanted an example of how close this series is and how close this series has been over the past couple of years, then that's probably the best example that you'll ever get. But hopefully these guys might be able to break the deadlock as the final couple of laps of qualifying are starting to sort of appear on the horizon here. Marko Pejic up into P2 at the moment. He is 1,000th of a second ahead of Siggy. So, yes, Lohner's walking away with pole position at the moment, at least relatively compared to everyone else, but everyone else is all stacked up together.
Look at that, two Porsches at the head of your field there, followed by the Audi and two Bentleys. Mercedes in sixth. We've got quite a good spread there of manufacturers in the top six positions. So, you know, it's looking good for the balanced performance, at least for this circuit, and we're going to be getting some really close action out there today.
It looks like we are. In particular, inside of that, I would say top 6-7 positions. That's potentially incredibly exciting to see if those guys are similarly close on race pace, and they can give us some great side-by-side battling over the course of the event as well. So that's what we're looking forward to in that front little group. I'm just seeing if Yarshel did set himself a time. Yes, he did. He's up into P11 now, so everyone has set a time. Which is good to see, because you don't want to start at the back of the grid if you just fail to set a time at every single attempt. So Yarshel is on the board now, and well, the only way from here is up, I suppose.
Yeah, but look at that, 0.3 of a second slower in Sector 1, so not having a good lap. Sector 2, not too bad. But how this Bentley goes, of course, the different cars having different handling characteristics as well. Some cars will suit this type of track more than others. Thinking the Porsche and the Audi would be a good shout for around here, but that Bentley looks really strong out there today. Across the line, and look at that, moves himself up into 9th place.
Yeah, we've had our top three already come down towards the pit lane, so they will not be completing their qualifying. Of course, it does like to show us the results a little bit early here, but there is still some slight time left in the session that maybe Keithley could move himself up a couple of positions from P5. But there's the provisional qualifying results at the moment, with Moritz Lohner pole position, Marko Pejic in P2, Jacob Brzezinski P3, Kevin Siggy P4, Jack Keithley P5 at the moment, unless he can get around in the next 3 seconds, which I don't think he can. Jojo Baldi P6, Christopher Högveld P7, Florian Hasse P8, and then you see the run down through P10 and then in towards the back end of the field with the likes of a couple of strong drivers towards the back. Nico Nuninghoff at the back, Ilhan Yajovski also languishing there down in the 29th position to start this race. So a couple of strong drivers that could work their way through the field. Of course, it wasn't an ideal qualifying for them, but it might give us some excitement a little bit further back as those guys try to find their footing.
Yeah, and you saw that that qualifying result, a second covering first to 29th. So again, I keep on saying this all the way through this show so far. these are some of the best sim racers in the world, and they're showing it right now in how close a competition they are. So we are going to get some really sensational racing, and the drivers just getting a little bit of time now to, if they want to just get a little bit of a feel for the track again and get themselves into a race mindset before the start of this first 20-minute sprint race.
Yeah, that's the benefit of having this little warm-up session in between the qualifying and the race. You know, especially if you've had a particularly close qualifying session, like some of the drivers inside the top 5 have, it just calms your nerves a little bit before you can get yourself ready in race mode, like you said, Paul, to be able to go full attack mode on the first lap of the race. There will be a little bit of a difference compared to last season, though, for this season, in that we will not be doing a standing start. We will be doing a rolling start, but we will be doing it in a manual fashion. So you'll technically see the green flag fly and the driver's theoretically able to go, but everyone will just line themselves up single file, pulling off the starting grid. They will then work their way through the lap, and then eventually towards the final couple of corners they will get themselves double file, and then we'll go for the real race start. So don't be fooled by the fact that the session has technically started.
Yeah, it's really it's going to be interesting how they get on. Of course, it's the first time that they're doing this, and I mean, from what we saw of them practicing earlier on, then you would say that they did actually a really good job of it. So hopefully they could take that into the race, where it'll be a bit more competitive. I think in a practice start, it's more sort of, right, let's just make sure it works. Okay, wonderful. When it comes to the actual start of this race, I think the red mist may descend in a couple of cases. Hopefully not, but you never know. You never write that out.
Yeah, you can certainly. Here's Isaac Price out there at the moment in his Bentley, and we've already come across the situation where the Bentleys are particularly popular here today, or at least in this season. Of course, there's been a little bit of murmurings behind the scenes, shall we? Of course, because these drivers have to lock in their car choices before the season starts, but there might be a situation where we might need to allow the drivers to have a change of car coming into round number 2. So we'll keep you up to date with regards to that, and we'll know if for race 2 that if the drivers will be allowed to change the cars due to different patches that have come through on the race room side of things. But for now, it seems like it's a season with majority Bentleys. There's a good handful of Audis out there as well, a smattering of Mercedes, and one Corvette I'm seeing with Christopher Runde further down the order.
Yes, the Freedom unit out there, the Corvette, and it'll be great to see that out there on track. They certainly make a great noise as well. But yeah, a smattering of Porsches, I think, is what I'd say as well. But they're looking very strong, those two Porsches up at the head of qualifying. But yeah, Team Redline in the BMW. This is a car that some just don't get on with, but some really love this car and the way it drives. So it's not just about, which is the strongest car. It's also about driver style, driver preference. You might prefer a car that's a little bit more on edge, something like the Audi, whereas you might want something that's a little bit more compliant and feels a bit more solid. And it's all down to that driver preference as to what they want to run and what they want to drive. So they will, of course, have tested all the various cars and see which is the best for them.
And of course, the organisers, have tried to predict the future somewhat and have established balance of performance changes, and in the sense that they can add ballast to the car, they can reduce a couple of % off the maximum horsepower of these cars as well. So there are a couple of tools that the race administrators, the race stewards, can use to make sure that everyone sort of has a more level playing field. But you know how it is both in esports racing and in real life racing, Paul, where some people's definition of fair differs from other people's definition of fair.
I mean, we all know the stories about a certain race in France where the balance performance is done by the practice, and you've got teams heavily sandbagging. They then change the balance performance. All of a sudden, those teams move forward through to the head of the field. So it's the organisers, no matter, and they always have the best intentions, and they're always trying to get as much data as possible to try and make it a fair, balanced performance. Sometimes you just can't get it right, and it does show. But they do have the best intentions. I mean, looking at today, the Audi's got an extra 5 kilos and 1% less horsepower as well. The Corvette, again, 5 kilos and 2% less horsepower. And the Mercedes, same as the Audi, 5 kilos and 1% less horsepower. So that's how things stack up here for this opening round at Oschersleben.
We are just under 60 seconds away from getting our gridding procedure for the first ever sprint race of the season. And I certainly can't wait for it. These guys have had a close qualifying already. Let's hope that translates into the race as well. And of course, we got 2 other races to have as well after we get this one done. We have the GT4 Support Series coming up after this sprint race. And then after that, we'll be getting the 40-minute endurance race with these guys back out there at Oschersleben. So a day, or rather an evening, if you're European, full of racing here today on the RaceRoom service, and drivers are just a handful of seconds away now from getting that gridding procedure underway. But of course, you know, they'll stack up on the grid, but they'll still have that formation lap to get everything sorted. There we go then. So time has expired in this mini warm-up session, so we are imminently going to be transferring over into that sprint race session, and then we can get this race going here in the 2021 season of the ADAC GT Masters Esports Championship. So they'll take the minute here, Paul, to get themselves to the starting grid, and then they will begin their formation lap.
Yeah, they'll already have a predefined selection of a list of what they need to do here before the start of the race. Make sure you've got the correct setup and fuel amount for this sprint race. Make sure you've got everything in place, know what you're starting from, knowing when to line up double file on the formation lap. That's going to be crucial because they've got to be double file by shell curve. So it's knowing all those little intricacies for an opening lap like that, and make sure everything's ready for the start of this race. So we won't be getting to start the race immediately. You won't be seeing them all jump away at the green flag. We have got a formation lap coming up.
Yeah, so you'll see the red lights show at the very top of the screen. They will extinguish, and then the cars will start rolling, but not at racing speed, of course. They will go under pace speeds and get themselves single file here for this initial lap. That's why we've added 2 minutes to the race timer, is to just get all this entire process done. As you can see them all get themselves in order on the way down in towards turn number 1, and then flicking that car in towards that very long right-hander of hotel turn number 2. So, Moritz Lohner, pole position, Marko Pejic, P number 2, Jacob Brzezinski, P3, Kevin Siggy, P4, Jack Keithley, P5. Those are the top 5 cars. They've got Jojo Baldi, Christopher Högfeldt, Florian Hasse, Lucas Müller, and Tim Yarshall, bringing things down to the top 10 cars. So, you know, this is where you have to, as a driver, you really have to focus now. You got to make sure that, you know, you can time the green flag correctly, because they're doing it manually in the session. So the race administrators will give the command via text, and then the drivers will react via that, by seeing that text and leaning on the noisy pedal for all intents and purposes. So you've really got to be on the ball.
Yeah, so you'll start seeing the drivers soon forming up here as we're heading towards shell curve. There you go. So now we've got the front row formed up. Everybody else is going to fall into line, and they've got to keep this formation all the way. Of course, no overtaking until the start line in this one, and we have got live race stewards, don't forget, so they will be keeping an eye on things. So drivers, you know, they can end up getting penalties if they're not careful.
That would be the wrong foot for the season to start off on, to be under the ire of the stewards You don't want all of that unwanted attention, but we are just a couple of moments away from getting the 2021 season of the ADAC GT Masters Esports Championship powered by MBW Mobility Plus underway. They come across the grid spots here, about to start the first lap, waiting for the command to go. And the command has been given, and we see the fanning out immediately on the way down in towards turn number 1 here. Maybe a challenge for the race lead coming down into turn 1. No, it's a big challenge though for P2 between Jacob Brzezinski and Kevin Siggy here, as, oh my words, Jack Heathley just about gets himself, or rather forces himself through on the Team Redline car there, as further back in the order, still positions yet undecided for those positions P10 and back here. Jojo Baldy involved in the thick of things here with Nikodem Wisniewski early on, but everyone else I think is relatively clean through the first couple of corners.
Yeah, it seems to be that everybody's able to get going. I was thinking that the Audi of Siggy was on for a winner there. Seemed to get a really good launch off of row number 2, but then got bullied out the way by that big Bentley of Brzezinski and Keithley. So those two in the Bentleys working together and trying to move their way forward. Moritz Lerner is out at the front of the field, and Brzezinski already on the flashlight headlights button. He's wanted by. He wants to get past the leader, trying to get into his head, but it'll take a lot with the former champion at the head of the field.
Yeah, Moritz Lerner was clear by a good couple of tenths of a second in qualifying. He looks to try and break clear early on in this race. Of course, the slipstream is not helping him at the moment. It's keeping Brzezinski, Keithley, Siggy there or thereabouts, but this isn't really a track that's known for its large drafting zones, so it's going to be a very minimal effect here over the grand scheme of the entire race. So we'll just have to see how that works out, but we've got the first lap in the books now, Paul. No dramas at the front of the field, and I don't think there's been any too many dramas throughout the rest of the field either. We've still got all 31 cars still running.
Yeah, that's really good start, although not a great start for the man who started in second place, down to 6th him, as we'll look further back as well to Muller, who's battling away with Yarshal, and Yarshal trying to get himself back into 10th place. Muller in that Audi, it looks so small compared to that Bentley, doesn't it, the Audi? It's really good to see those differences, but this is what GT3 cars and GT3 racing brings to you, that variation in cars, the different approaches, and that's why we'll love it so much.
Yeah, just the variety of body shapes that you see out there. You see the aggressive features of the Audi, but the more boxy look of the Bentley, and you know, even the Corvette, you know, that classic American sports car look. We do have one in the field. It's just at the very back right now. It's 31st out of 31 drivers, so not exactly ideal for the Corvette, the one and only Corvette at the moment. Let's try and get a look at him just to give him some TV time. There he is, Christopher Rodner, dead last in the car that no one wants to drive.
Well, he wants to drive it, so it means that nobody, you know, it's not nobody, it's just that very few want to drive it out there. But Lerner, it's crucial to see, has pulled out about half a second lead at the front of the field. So he's doing a good job. And, well, I have to say, really impressed with the clean driving. You mentioned about the slipstream. There isn't much of a slipstream here because the longest straight is the pit straight. And the problem with that is that you haven't got the biggest of braking zones into turn 1. Turn 2, between turns 1 and 2 is where you've got the big braking going on there. So, yeah, it's not really an opportunity into turn 1. If you do it, you've got to have the cooperation of the driver that you're trying to overtake. Here's
Jeffrey Rietveld all over the back of Alexander Dornaden there, coming down the back straight into the final sector, looking to the inside for the right as well, but that is not typically of an overtaking opportunity there into the penultimate corner. But now in through the final corner, let's see if Rietveld can get some form of drive off to try and hold any advantage on the way down in towards turn number 1, but I don't think he's been able to get a good enough run this time around to be able to challenge in towards turn number 1. It just goes to show how difficult it is to really manufacture yourself an opportunity here. But meanwhile, look at this side by side, Kazubon versus Müller through a couple of corners, now into the left-hander of Hasseröder. Müller on the inside, just about able to gain the advantage.
Yeah, he hangs on to that position, does Müller. It was worth pointing out, whilst we were looking at that battle between Rietveld, it also behind them in the shot going into the final corner was a very forceful move from Isaac Price, the British driver, getting the move done on Garcia. So the Spaniard dropping down a position into that final corner. If you're going to make a move there, it's got to be a lunge, and that's exactly what happened. But these two, Kazubon and Müller, really putting the pressure on each other, and they've dropped back quite a bit, actually, a second and a half off of Yarshal. So these two battling is just slowing each other down, and got a queue of cars behind. It's like a bank holiday Monday coming back from the seaside in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of, the weather's been particularly hot here, and I'm absolutely roasting in my room right now with all my production equipment running, but these guys, they'll be absolutely sweating it out there as well, trying to work the wheel, especially these guys, with the guys that have, in particular, direct drive wheels, where there's a lot of force going on that they have to try and counteract. There's a mistake from Müller coming up through Hotel Corner. Now Kazubon has been able to get to his inside, but can he complete the move here? He'll have to be around the outside at the Hasseröder. Can Kazubon carry the momentum through? Müller commits to the corner. Bunky straight underneath them. He might be able to get one in that Bentley, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to get the other as well. He'll get the inside over Kazubon here in towards the triple left, and that's a great move there from Bunky to capitalize on what was going on ahead of him.
And that's what you need to do around this track. You've got to be ever the opportunist and take the advantage when you can. You can see behind as well, more door banging and paint swapping going on as well. But Banky, brilliant vision to see that those two were fighting. We had exactly the same thing happen the lap before between Müller and Kazubon going into Hasseröder. So he saw that opportunity open and open, went, right, I've got to go for it now. And that's exactly what you need to do here.
Oh, a little bit of, it's getting a little bit antsy down here inside just inside the top 20. There's a big dive down the inside there from Isaac Price over Jeffrey Rietveld. This is coming through the final corner. Isaac Price towards the driver's right-hand side of the circuit there. Rietveld looking to come back at him in towards turn number 1. He's in that Team Redline car on the inside, but Isaac Price will get clear by the time the turn-in point arrives. So Isaac Price, I mean, I think you mentioned it earlier, or at least in the opening few laps of this race, that he was going like a bat out of hell trying to overtake people.
Yeah, that last corner, Zeppelin curve, really looks to be his favourite place to go for those moves. We've got side by side in front as well. So, yeah, it's one of those opportunities, and Price, he's last of the late breakers, he really does go for it. And he does not give an inch. He's an aggressive driver, but he will play it fair as well. And he's looking like he's getting stuck in out there, although he's in that queue of traffic now. When you're so close together in a pack like this, you're kind of limited by what the car in front is doing with you. In fact, there's a slowdown there for one of your drivers, the 71. So he's obviously had either a corner cut or been instructed by race stewards to gift some place back.
It was a steward's decision. A bit of contact there between Rietveld and Price. These guys are at each other's throats so far this race. It's absolutely incredible stuff. Oh no! Isaac Price sprints in the middle of traffic out of the final corner. Collected a couple of drivers in that one as well. Hopefully they don't have too much damage, but I think that was really going to only end one way.
I think he was helped into the final corner, and that momentum then that he got given has ended up forcing him wide, and he loses control of the car. And I think the stewards will be having a look at that one and thinking, is that completely fair?
Yeah, I think so too. So back to what I was saying before I was rudely interrupted by a bit of contact. Leonard Krippener, we saw him have the slowdown penalty. He was punished with a 6-second slowdown penalty for hitting Kazubon into Dorneden. So that was sort of a domino effect crash that he was involved in on the first lap. I believe it was, turn number 11. So that's what happened there with Kripner. It took a couple of laps for the decision to come through on that one, but we'd rather have a decision made during the race than after the race. That's the preferable way to do it, at least if you ask me. This is the closest battle that you have on track right now up on your screen. At least that's for it's near enough the front half of the field. It is Dorneden versus Garsner. Of course, Dorneden was involved in that lap 1 incident with Kripner, but it doesn't look like he suffered too much because of it, at least in terms of the damage to his car.
Yeah, looks to be good so far, and those cars looking straight. I'll be surprised if any of this mid-pack has any straight panels after this race. The intensity of the battling that's been going on in this mid-pack has been absolutely sensational. And, well, Casabon down to 13th here in this race. We saw him battling for the 11th, 12th place, and he still can't get past Banky. Banky, of course, who made that lunge to the inside through Hasserode a few laps ago to get himself up into 12th place. And Casabon cannot find a way past that Bentley at the moment.
It's the widest Bentley in the universe as far as Thibaut Casabon is concerned right now. Banky's covering off the lines pretty well, not really gifting Casabon any sort of opportunity for the moment. And I think, you know, what we've seen from a lot of the passes that have happened over the course of this race, it's been less one driver manufacturing an opportunity for themselves. It's been more an error from the driver ahead that has caused the driver behind to sort of be given that opportunity on the silver platter.
And that's what you find with these technical tracks, is you can't really make these overtakes on the tight track like this. But with it being a technical nature, mistakes happen more often on these types of tracks, and that's where you've got to have that opportunism in your driving ability to recognise what's happening in front and realise, oh, that guy's run wide, let's get into that gap, and then we'll work something out after that. So that's what you saw with Banky and Casabon a few laps ago at this very corner here. He got his nose in there, got alongside, and then completed the move into the triple. So that's what you need to do around a track like this, is have that opportunity. One driver who's not having to worry about that is your race leader, of course.
There he is. I said early on he was trying to break away, and break away he has done by about 2 seconds over the rest of the field. I gotta say, is Jacob Brzezinski's flashy light button stuck? Because he's been constantly flashing the lights since the very start of this race, so that might be an issue that he has to deal with. Let's have a look. There he is. Blinky blink.
I mean, I have seen it in the past where a driver accidentally mapped their flashlights button to their push-to-talk button for the team whenever they were talking to the teammates over Discord or whatever service that the teams use. So I have seen that in the past, but yeah, I do think that's definitely just stuck, flat out stuck on, is that button.
Yeah, it does seem to be the case. We're going to cycle things back to the Banky versus Casabon battle right now, because Casabon is really leaning on the back bumper of that Bentley and really trying to apply the pressure. And of course, it is a very, very valid strategy. You got to get inside the mind of the driver ahead of you, try and make them crack, try and force them into a mistake. But Banky's been pretty cool about it so far.
Yeah, looking very assured in that Bentley. Of course, you've seen the two different lines as well that the two drivers are taking. That's just Casabon trying to do something different. If you're following the wheel tracks of the car in front and brake when they brake and accelerate when they accelerate, you're just going to be stuck in that position. You have to try and find something different, something that really gives you that little bit of maybe a run out of the corner to carry the speed down a straight. I mean, a place to do that would be to get as wide as possible into that final corner, try and get the cut out of it, get a late apex and go through. And there you go, drive-through penalty for ignoring slow-down warnings for Isaac Price. I mean, things just go from bad to worse for the Brit.
Yeah, he's down in P30 at the moment, and yeah, with that drive-through penalty, he's going to be even more behind at that point. I don't know if he'll drop behind Nestor Garcia, because Garcia actually, I think he's retired from the race. At least he's not currently out there on circuit, so he's continuing to have the time slip away from him as he resides on pit lane. But yeah, Isaac Price, I mean, he's at the back of the runners right now, so any further penalty, that drive-through penalty, just kind of is the final nail in the coffin as far as his race goes. So he's going to have to be looking to maybe pick up a couple of positions if people have problems a little bit later on in the race and also retire. But yeah, but for him, it's all focused on race 2 now.
Yeah, it is, and of course we do get a different grid for the start of race 2. So there is an inverted grid portion of the grid. I believe it's the top 10 from memory, from reading the rule book. But yeah, these drivers, yes, top 10. So at the moment, Charles, in 10th place, is in a very strong position because he's currently in line to get pole position for the feature race, the 40-minute endurance race. So solid points in 10th. I mean, you'd be looking at about 14 points for 10th. But then that reverse grid up and starting in the front. You've seen how difficult it is to overtake here. I wouldn't rule him out of winning the endurance race if, of course, he doesn't move forward and keeps that pole position.
Yeah, the benefit for him, at least coming into the final couple of minutes of this race, though, is that no one's really threatening him for that 10th place. You know, under normal circumstances, you know, there might be a couple of cars trying to fight it out for that reverse grid pole position. But Tim Yarshall's in a super comfortable spot right now. He's over 3 seconds ahead of Mahle, who resides in 11th right now. So he has basically that reverse grid pole position, you know, in his grasps at the moment. He just needs to get to the end of the race. But, you know, if he wants to gain a couple more points, maybe get past Hasse, get past Boldy, it's going to be a tough ask considering the circuit. But, you know, that's also an option as well. Plus, he will still be starting in a good place for the second race as well. So you got to work that out as a driver in your head. Is it worth going for the points here in the sprint race when you're in this position, or do you want to sort of put all of your eggs in one basket and go for the race 2 pole position and try and hold on?
I mean, ideally, you want to get as many points as possible if you're that driver. But at a track like this where overtaking is at a premium, you're not going to try something risky if you're in this position right now, because you may end up giving yourself a penalty. So that'd be the last thing you want, being in that 10th spot. And it really is a case of weighing up whether you're going to be better off just sticking in that position, get a 10th. I mean, by no means are you guaranteed to win that endurance race if you do start on pole position, because of course we have got that mandatory pit stop phase as well, and anything can happen in pit stop, that's for sure. So Lerner, he's looking solid for a first win of the season already, but Brzezinski and Keithley, 2 teammates, well, they've just stayed line to CERN, and Keithley's not really putting any pressure on. But we've got pressure on further down.
Yeah, we have. Battle for minor positions, but battle nonetheless. Pinces, Nagy, Krippner. It's those last 2 that are going side by side right now through the right hand. Krippner on that outside. Can't get any runner speed whatsoever in that situation. This is the battle for P24, 25. That's on your screen right now. So, you know, minor positions, but, you know, it all matters in the grand scheme of things, considering, you know, it's grid spots for race number 2 as well, and, you know, minor points on offer. So every little advantage matters in a season like this when, for example, at the end of the season, last time out, it was only, what was it, 7 points in between Lohner and Garcia for the championship win at the very end, and that could have swung very easily.
Absolutely, and this is it. You know, you hit the nail on the head by saying, yeah, they maybe not be fighting for points or fighting for big points, but they're trying to get themselves a better starting position for that endurance race, which will be coming up later this evening. So these drivers, they're pushing on and pushing hard. They're trying to get to that position to try and get themselves as good as possible. But yeah, it's not quite panning out for these drivers further down. But we are into the final minute here at Connery. And, well, it's looking secure for first. But the rest of the positions, it's all pretty close out there.
Yeah, and everything's starting to get a little bit close because I saw a couple of pieces of red on my timing screen, which means these guys are within 0.2 of a second. So maybe some drivers been waiting for this very final moment to try and push on. You have this battle for 19th between Jajowski and Ritzfeld, which is getting close. You have typically that Bunky and Kazubon battle, which is still raging on between the two of them as they head their way through the final corner to start their final lap here, coming up across the line. 18 seconds left remaining on the play clock, and Kazubon not in the position to be able to challenge down in towards turn number 1 this time around. So basically, Kazubon's hoping for a mistake from Bunky. That might have been it here. Just overcooks the corner slightly, but he's able to keep himself ahead for now. Kazubon still within 1/10 of a second here, looking for a move on the brakes in towards the Hasseröder, but unsuccessful. There is your race leader, and I have to say race winner in just a couple of moments' time. The first sprint race has been all Moritz Lohner's. It has been an absolutely fantastic performance from start to finish here, and this is exactly what he needed coming into this season after his fantastic performance in 2020 as well. He didn't win a single race in 2020, but he starts off on the right foot here in 2021. Moritz Lohner through the final corner to win the sprint race here at Oschersleben. He heads his way across the line in his Porsche. He flashes the lights. He takes the checkered flag for the sprint race. Meanwhile, further back, well, no battles really to speak of. You got Brzezinski P2, Jack Heathley P3. It was close between Hasser and Yashel coming across the line, P9 and 10. Everyone else further down the order, though. Banki, Kazubon battle, they head their way across the line. You can see how close this mid-pack was throughout. We're only talking on the order of, halves of seconds between all of them. And, that's just how close this series is. But there's the race results here at the end of the sprint race. Moritz Lohner comes away with it. Brzezinski on the podium, same too with Keithley in P3.
Yeah, and Lohner with the fastest lap as well. Nice Grand Slam there. Pole position, race win, and fastest lap. He'll be looking forward to the second race, where he'll be a bit more intense there. Yashal, as I pointed out, that crucial 10th place will start on pole position with Hasser alongside him on the front row of the feature of this endurance race. I keep on saying feature race, it's endurance race.
Yeah, it is endurance race. So, I mean, the terminology can be interchanged somewhat between all the different series that we tend to cover in these things. But there we go. There is the sprint race done. We will take a little bit of a break from GT3 racing, and we're going to be heading into the GT4 support race, which could be very, very interesting indeed. The different categories can possibly give different styles of racing, Paul.
Absolutely, got less downforce on these GT4 cars, so they're going to be moving about a bit more on track. And I personally prefer driving GT4 to GT3. I like just having that movement in the car. A little bit of a less downforce means that you're having to work the wheel, work the throttle to help turn the car in some cases with some of the vehicles where they maybe got a bit of understeer built into those cars. So definitely GT4, it can produce some really exciting racing, and what more could we ask for? We don't want a big break between the sprint race and the endurance race. Let's get some GT4 action and get those guys going out, because I'm sure they'll be knocking 7 bells out of each other through this race.
Yeah, I think so as well. Apologies if I'm looking to my left a lot, because I'm having to produce this stream as well, so I have to get myself into the next session to be able to bring you the coverage for it. But what a first race that we had for the sprint race of the GT3s, though. Maybe not so much side-by-side battling at the very front of the field, but the mid-pack and back was absolutely lit.
Yeah, we never expected there to be, overtakes at every corner around this track. It's not that type of track. It's quite tight, quite twisty, very technical. So you've got to be a thinking person with your overtakes. You've got to look at where you've got those advantages over your competitor to try and get that move and get that stick. And as we saw in that race as well, take the opportunities when they come to you, because they're few and far between, especially with the level of competition you've got out there. So really, just get the bit between your teeth, push on, and force a mistake from your competitor.
Yeah, that's been the main theme that we're seeing over the course, at least that we saw in the sprint race, where we discussed it during the race, where it's so difficult to overtake, you really just kind of have to try and get into the mind of the driver ahead of you. You're trying to rattle their cage. You're trying to get them to make an error somewhere, so yeah, you can just sort of sneak in underneath them, get the pass done, and then, you know, look to try and make progress forwards after that, and try and hold on to position. It's a very different kind of racing. Some drivers definitely don't prefer that kind of racing. They prefer the very obvious overtaking opportunities with heavy braking zones and wide entries to corners and things like that. But it does mean that it maybe promotes a little bit of a different skill set from the drivers compared to a track that's more accessible to overtaking.
I come from people know me, have heard me on various other broadcasts. They'll know that I come from a bit more of a touring car background with my racing that I've done in sim racing, and I'm all about that door rubbing. You know, it's not a contact sport, but it is, as long as it's not pushing people out the way and just punting to pass in. It's a bit of rubbing, a bit of paint swapping. I'm okay with it. I'm fine with that. You know, it's all fair in love and racing, and that's what I love. So that pack, I would have been thriving in that pack if I had an extra 4 or 5 seconds of pace. That is.
Yeah, I don't think either of us are good enough to even set times remotely close to these guys. Definitely me. Maybe you might fare a bit of a better chance, Paul, but for me, yeah. It's I talk about races, I don't try and race competitively in them, because it doesn't usually end well for me. But we are just about set to get ourselves into the, well, at least into the practice session for the moment here for the GT4 event. Of course, we've got a little bit of time left remaining before we get into qualifying for them, but it's worth just putting those cars up on screen. GT4s here then, Paul. A couple of minutes of practice left. What are your thoughts?
Well, as I say, these cars, they have a little bit less downforce to them. You know, we're seeing the Audi here. You get a good comparison compared to the GT3 car. You've not got all the same aero as you have on the GT3s. You maybe a little bit down on your top power as well with these cars. They're more aligned to the road-going car than the GT3s. They're a little bit less developed than those. So yeah, all we're seeming to see at the moment is Audis out there on track. There are other cars around, but
there's one.
Yeah, there's another car. So yeah, you can see how you've got those differences in that, and how there isn't quite the same level of downforce. Downforce is the main thing with these cars. They just can't carry the speed through the medium to high speed corners that the GT3 cars would. So yeah, you'll still get some great action, because it means that the cars are less affected by the draft from the other cars that they're competing against. So you can get closer pack racing. I mean, how you could get closer than what we just saw in the GT3s, I don't know, but good luck to them.
Yeah, it seems like the most popular choice by far in this session has been the Audi. We have this one Lotus, piloted by Ville Kreveri from Finland. We also have a single BMW with Kirill Sokovikov. And then you've also got a Porsche piloted by Jan-Jukka Fruhlen. So that's the situation here in the GT4 category. Of course, these guys don't really have to lock in their decisions before the race, before the season starts. So they have to, they can freely pick what they think is fastest for each circuit, and it does seem to be, in the vast majority of cases, that it's the Audi that is the fastest here, and that's why you'll see basically a single make Audi spec cup, I suppose. Yeah, you're going to see how one car will dominate the choices out there per race we get in the championship and the support series. But as you mentioned, though, the crucial thing with this series is that the top 3 do get that automatic qualification into the GT3
Championship. So yeah, definitely you've got that opportunity there, and it's plenty for you to get on with and really push yourself on and get yourself a position in the championship.
Yeah, we'll have to see exactly what how the situation turns out, I suppose. But we are at the end of practice here for the GT4 support race of the ADAC GT Masters Esports Championship. Qualifying is a go, as you see those drivers all swarm coming out of pit lane to be able to get their outlap started here, not wanting to hang about and try and find their own space. They're all trying to go out at the exact same time. Exactly how it worked here in the GT3 race. We will have 10 minutes of open qualifying here before we get into our race here today, which is going to be another 20 minutes.
Yeah, and this is something that I've never quite understood with race drivers. They want to get out there at the same time and get out there as quickly as possible. Me personally, I like to wait in the pit lane, say half a minute to a minute, depending on the track, and then go out there on my own. Give myself some space so that then I can just concentrate on myself, not have to worry about, say, if somebody loses control through one of the corners and it compromises your lap, and the next lap you get something wrong, you cut across a chicane, and before you know it, you're having to restart again, and you're running out of time that way. Give yourself that space and that thinking room, so if you do have a mistake, or if somebody else is having a mistake out there, it's not affecting your run.
Yeah, you just have to try and find your own, not only your own physical space out there on circuit, but your own sort of mental space as well, to be able to go chasing for those lap times. Because the last thing you want is to just, you know, get held up slightly by another driver, or even if you're not being held up by that driver, sometimes some drivers fall into the habit of following in the tire tracks of the driver that's driving ahead of them, and therefore not putting themselves in the best position to be able to put their laps together in a constructive fashion. So, because if you're trying to copy the driving style of another driver, well, that's not what you practiced, and you know, all of a sudden the time is just going out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly, and you saw there, end of the outlap for all drivers, they were all checking up into that final corner, because they're all trying to get the best launch out of the final corner, carry that speed across the line to start their lap. And you know, if you're further down in the pack, it acts like an accordion, and it just gets slower and slower until you're all coming to a standstill into the final corner. And if you're not careful, if you're not paying attention, say you're changing a setting or something like that, you can end up going into the back of the queue and ruining yourself and other people's chances of qualifying well. So you've got to concentrate in these qualifying, and well, the Team Fordzilla driver is certainly putting on a purple first and second sector.
Yeah, Michelisz. So setting the early pace here. Ooh, he has to be very, very careful with the track exit there. Can't afford to pick up any sort of off track that makes your qualifying lap invalid. But it looks like he's okay. Drive out of the final corner. You see the first couple of lap times come through, and Michelisz does go provisional pole position there. He is, I would feel, or at least from my experience, is going to be one of the stronger drivers in the field here today, at least from my previous experience on commentating some race room events. There's lots of drivers still yet to set themselves lap times, though. We have Quentin Vialate, who's just about to head his way across the line for RaceRoom Esports. Of course, that is Romain Grosjean's esports team here. Vialate across the line goes P4 at the moment here today. So the times are slowly but steadily trickling in, but it seems like a good handful, I would say about a third of drivers, didn't actually have that first lap as a valid lap.
Yeah, they're you know, just testing those limits, and as we say, just you want to get that banker in. As we said in the opening qualifying session for the GT3s, you want to get that banker lap in, get yourself a good solid lap time, so you can say, right, let's give it everything. Let's push the pedal down into the Axminster and really push it. But it is good to see, you know, that mixture of cars. Okay, yes, majority of grid is Audis, but we've got a KTM out there. got a Lotus and a BMW as well. So it's good to see that mix of cars out there, even if they are single cars. Costa, that's not the way into that corner after the triple, and yeah, let's get it back up underway and give it another go.
Marvin Otterbach has not yet set a lap time. Looks like this one is going to be valid, as we saw a change near the top as Risco Capet went P2, Jonas Vanna in P3. Otterbach across the line as the privateer driver. He goes P8 here for the moment for this GT4 support race of the ADAC GT Masters Esports Championship. So the order currently, Cian, Capet, Vanna, Markovic and Ottaviani as your top 5. Maybe not quite as close as we saw the GT3s, but I mean, it's difficult for these GT4s to try and replicate that, let me say. It's difficult for any type of car to, or any other fielded drivers to try and replicate what the GT3 guys did.
Yeah, exactly. It's a big drift there, and trying to get himself an appearance in the Fast and Furious film by the looks of things there. But yeah, certainly. Oh, there's the sole KTM, and I do have to say, personally, it's a design that only a mother could love. It really is. It's aesthetically, to me, it's not the best looking car out there on the grid, but Soren Jager doing a good job piloting that car up into 13th at the moment, trying to push on and get another lap time in. 0.172 set to 1 over, and that's what happens. That's what can happen in qualifying when you're all out there on track together.
Yeah, just the perils of open qualifying there as the KTM gets caught up in an instant. That certainly was not their fault, and another couple of cars going off in the background there. I gotta say though, that KTM does look like someone tried to make a baby prototype, but kind of failed at it. It just looks super weird, especially with the very, very short wheelbase.
I was actually thinking more it was designed on an Etch-a-Sketch, but that's my own.
It's baby's first prototype.
Again, it's my own personal opinion, but a lot of people do like that car. So fair play to them. I could never drive that car competitively, so if you can reel and wheel that car and get it working for you, then hey, all the best to you. That's what I say. 23 cars covered by a second. John Monroe down in 23rd at the moment, just inside that 1 second mark. So again, quite a relatively close field here in the GT4s.
I mean, our 1 second bracket is down to P23 at the moment, so 23 drivers all within the same second in terms of lap time. But, well, that's kind of understandable considering these guys had to qualify via leaderboards and hot laps into this. So you would have thought that they would be similarly close and similarly well prepared for qualifying as well. It just means that there's maybe a couple of other cars out there compared to the leaderboard running a little bit earlier on in the week. Risto Capet going along well out there, not setting purple sectors just yet. Those green sectors are more sort of improvements on his personal best. So we will see as he heads his way out the final sector to see if he's able to do anything about Emre Cian at the very front of the qualifying order right now. It is a purple sector 3, but it's not quite enough. He's still about just over a tenth of a second shy of the pole time.
Did you see how the Estonian Capet took a different line to most people through that final corner? Just getting 2 wheels onto the curb, whereas a lot of people are all over the curb and then onto the green painted runoff there as well on the exit of that final corner. So different lines being taken by Capet, and yeah, that final sector absolutely on it there. Just needs to hook up those first 2 seconds, but time is running out here, just about a minute to go.
So Jonas Vanna, P3, green sector 1, sector 2. What's his sector 3 like? It is an improvement, but gets him nowhere as far as changing up the order there at the very front. So he will remain in that 3rd spot, 2nd row of the starting grid here today. Risto Capet has taken a tow back to pit lane. I think that's Jonas Vanna also abandoning the qualifying session as well. It does mean that man, Emre Cian, well, unless there's a big surprise from someone further down the order, you might have his pole position on lockdown at the moment. Not going to be able to improve, I don't think, over the course of this lap. It's a bit of a slower Sector 1 and Sector 2 compared to his personal best. that is the end of the session as far as our graphics package is concerned, but we'll wait for things to run through. And there you see it, there's the swap. Julian Kunze up into P2 then at the very dying moments of the session. So, my word, and look at that. Yeah?
With the exact same time as well, we've got it again in the GT4s.
You couldn't write the script, could you? Julian Kunze, 0.216 seconds behind Michelisz, same as Risto Capit, but as the way of things is here on RaceRoom, as Kunze will take that P2 away from Risto Capit in this situation. You can see the rest of the runners, though, further down the order, all the way down to P number 31 as we get ourselves another little warm-up session before the race here, Paul. How about that, though? 2 times in a row, we've had 2 drivers get the exact same time.
It's not quite the levels of the 1997 European Grand Prix where we had 3 drivers share the exact same time for pole position, but it's still pretty darn close out there, and yeah, definitely it's looking good to see some close competitive racing. But Michelisz absolutely on it. Now it's all well and good being good on a hot lap. You've now got to hook that up for 20 minutes out there. So the pressure will be on, and the pressure will be on Chian to hold on to that win. But you know, somebody's experienced to Chian will be looking solid at the start of this race.
Yeah, he's in a very, very good position. I mean, like I said, obviously pole position's a good position to be in, but especially at this circuit, you know, especially if you can get a good start and make sure you can cover off any moves into turn 1 and into the first sector, you're pretty much good to go for the most part until the end of the race from that point forwards. I mean, that's kind of what Moritz Lohner did in the GT3s. He was in fact able to pull away from the rest of the field in the race lead. But even if you do have the field still tagging along with you, due to it being so easy to defend here, that track position is just really going to pay dividends for you, and it's going to mean that you have a very decent chance at winning this race if you lead coming across the line after the completion of the first lap.
Yeah, it's getting that good start, making sure you don't make a mistake on the start of the lap, and carrying that then. Get yourself settled into a rhythm very quickly, because if you can get yourself into that rhythm, then it really does mean that you can then just get comfortable in the car, get comfortable at the front of the field if that's where you are. If you're in that pack, if you're in that mid pack, you're going to be very, very busy around here. As we saw in the sprint race of the GT3s, these GT4s, they can run so close together through the corners as well as down the straight. So it's going to be more about that driver ability to get the most out of these cars.
And that's exactly what we want the difference to be, right? You know, of course we have those slight differences between the cars, you know, between the different manufacturers with the balance of performance, but in the end we want it to be a championship where the driver can make the difference rather than car choice or even particularly setup. I'm a firm believer of setup should be only really effective to get the car in the right spot for that particular driver's driving style, rather than this being flat out faster than something else. But again, that's a whole different debate in both in sim racing and in real racing as well. But just a couple of minutes left of this warm up now. We're about 3.5 minutes left to go to get ourselves the gridding procedure underway for the support race in these GT4 machines. So, you know, it seems like Oschersleben has played a pretty good host to us so far at this one, but you know, there's still stories yet to be told, still events yet to happen, and I'm particularly pumped for this GT4 support race, mainly because this is the driver's chance to show on the big stage what they can do, because, you know, they might, like I said at the top of the show, these drivers might have tried to qualify into the GT Masters Esports Championship season through those shootouts, through those leaderboards, but were not quite unsuccessful. This is for them to, well, give them an opportunity to show what they're made of on a bigger stage, and I think that's absolutely brilliant.
How many times do we see it in both real world racing and in sim racing that the support series can throw up some even more exciting racing than the main event. So yeah, don't write off this race. Don't think this is a time to go and get yourself the beverage of your choice. This could be the race of the evening out there that we see. So these GT4s, they do produce some really close action, and given how close again this field is, especially after qualifying, we could be in for a belter.
I know there are a few KTM fans in the chat, so I just decided to give the KTM a little bit of love. I think some people were unhappy of how I was disrespecting the KTM a little bit earlier on, but it is an interesting choice though for Soren Jaeger. I mean, the only other drivers that have gone for single cars, and they're the only ones in their manufacturer, are Ville Crevery in the Lotus and Luca Froren in the Porsche. And I think we also got Solikolov on the Sokovikov in the BMW. So we have a handful of drivers that have gone for single. They're the only driver in that single make and model. I have to wonder what the thought process is. Is it more just that they're more comfortable with this car than the Audi, for example? Even though the Audi is faster for the regular person, maybe they can't quite get it up to speed as compared to things like the KTM, the Lotus, the Porsche, and the BMW.
As I say, different cars have different driving styles. By the way, I will say that one thing the KTM does provide you is tremendous vision. You really can see all the way around the car and see who's alongside you. Maybe missing the apex, maybe needs to clean the windscreen a little bit to capture the apex. But those cars that are, those drivers that are in those different cars, those different manufacturer cars, rather than being the Audis, they're driving those cars because that car suits their style of driving. The Audi's known for being a little bit prone to be a little bit nervous. Certainly the GT3 Audi. I've not personally driven the GT4 Audi myself, but I know with the GT3 Audi, it's a bit more of a nervous car, is that one. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't suit everybody, that style of driving. There's a lot of people who like something that's maybe just a little bit more stable. Might not be as quick on a single lap, but if you can get that consistency and be consistently quick, then that can be worth more in the race environment.
Yeah, and we'll have a, just for everyone's information, we will be having a standing start here today for the GT4s, so that's a difference compared to the GT3s. So we'll get ourselves a more sort of regular start here that we were used to seeing in the previous season for the ADAC GT Masters Esports Championship. But we get our gridding procedure underway then, and we're just that short minute away from getting our support race started here for the ADAC GT4 event. Of course, Emre Can on pole position. Let's see what he can do from the very front of the field here on this first lap. If he gets clear through the first couple of corners, he is in an amazing spot. As long as he can keep it on the grey stuff without mistakes, he has a great chance of coming away with the race win here today. But don't count out everyone else behind, though, because they can certainly capitalize on any mistakes that will be made over the course of this event. Just 15 seconds left remaining before we get those red lights showing to get the drivers prepared. And in fact, we're going to skip ahead just a little bit. We're about to go GT4 support race racing in the ADAC GT Masters Esports Championship powered by MBW Mobility Plus. Here we go, green flag for the GT4s in the support race. Emre Can gets away well from pole position. Julian Kunze, P2. Risto Capit drops down into P4 as he's been, sized down the inside there by Jonas Vanna. Vanna with the aggressive move to make progress. Capit spins round in front of traffic, though, and he gets cycled all the way to the back. That's so unfortunate from the driver that was really trying to look in his wing mirrors, trying to keep Vanna behind him, coming down in towards turn number 1. Now he's cycled all the way to the back, P31.
And of course, everybody will have had to have dived out the way of that car because it was right in the middle of turn number 2 at Hotel. So, yeah, really unfortunate for the driver who started 3rd place, the Estonian. and all the way down to the back of your field. There's going to be plenty of moving. I saw a lot of dust in the background of that shot, so somebody's been out in the kitty litter. There's a little bit of damage on Violette's car in 10th place, but at the front, Chian is doing exactly what they need to do right now. Get out to the front and try and pull away as early as you can so that you can then just drive within yourself, get a bit of breathing space, and then just manage your pace.
Coming towards the end of the first lap then. In towards the penultimate corner they come. Now in towards the final corner. We're focusing on Dravosikov here in P7. Across the line they come to complete lap number 1. So the order, Chian at the very front there, the Turkish driver, followed by the two Germans of Julian Kunze and Jonas Vanner. Then you have Adam Pincers and Markovic bringing things down to P5. So that's the order at the very front. Looking further back through the order, see if there's any swaps for positions going on. Their driver's getting close, but it seems like everyone is relatively single file for the moment. Risto Capet, if you're wondering, is still going. There he is, deep in the pack towards the very tail end of the field. But he has a lot of work to do now to try and recover anything from this race.
And you can see the damage to the front of that car as well, so it's picked up a few contacts when he had that mistake. Was down in 31st, has already got it up to 27th, as you can see on the timing tower on the left hand side of your screen. So Capet's trying to work the way forward, but so difficult to make those moves, and it'll be absolutely heartbreaking to have that happen. Further up your field, Otterbach is holding on to position ahead of Adam Czech, and those two going through the right at Shell and then the left at Amon Curve before Bauer Curve, this right hand of the penultimate corner. Carry the speed a little bit into the final corner, use all the track and then some for entry as well to give yourself the best exit out of that final corner to take you down the start and finish straight.
Yeah, and we have seen a couple of opportunities down in towards turn number 1 over the course of the GT3 sprint race, but it was really, those sorts of moves were encouraged more by someone getting a bad run out of the final corner as opposed to, like I said before, a manufactured opportunity by the driver trying to pass. So again, you're still having to rely on a lot of the mistakes from those drivers ahead of you to try and improve position here. Of course, when it comes to the GT3 main race, that might turn out to be a little bit different because we have that mandatory pit stop in effect, which is what we're, drivers can play around with the strategy a little bit. And of course, you have differences in the tyres with regards to undercuts and things because you have to take tyres on the pit stop. So a lot more intrigue coming up in the race after this one, but the GT4's coming along well at the moment. Apart from that drama we had at the very start with Risto Capet getting spun in front of absolutely everyone, it seems like everything has calmed down just a little bit, although I say that P2, P3 decided to have a couple of games between each other there as Vanner looks to try and get past Kunze.
So I did notice Kunze on the last lap as well, taking that little bit more of a defensive line into Shell. Look at that dive to the inside for third. Oh, Vanner running out wide, can carry the speed out the corner though, that's crucial. It's lost him a bit of time to second place and he's now got to concern himself with keeping his 4th place, going from attack to defence.
Yeah, it happens as quickly as that at this circuit. He clatters the curb on the inside there. He's got to be careful not to lose too much momentum by doing that. I think he is fine though, but you can see the group of cars behind them starting to close in at the moment because of these guys having their moment, shall I say, and it's also allowed the car ahead of Emre Can to just really drive away from them. It's a bit of deja vu, but instead of Moritz Lohner that we saw the sprint race, it's Emre Can.
Yeah, and Can, I mentioned, wanted to pull away and then just manage that lead. That's exactly what he's got right now, and he's got the bit between his teeth. You'll want to get a little bit more. He'll want to get over 2 seconds in the lead before he then sort of just drives within himself just that 1 or 2%. You don't want to go too calm and too slow, or else you'll allow them to catch up too quickly. So you just got to manage that gap at the front. Kunze seems to get the better run out of McDonald's and down that back straight. Look at this. Now, all over the back of... sorry, it's Vanna who gets the better run out of McDonald's, should I say. Kunze, not quite as good down that back straight. Look at that. You can see in the mirrors as well, the threat from behind as well. It's a very difficult position to be in, to be attacking in front of you, but at the same time concentrating about the driver behind you.
You have to have your wits about you. You have to just sort of manage your space in the middle there. Again, Vanna clattering up over the curb through the second turn. I'm starting to think that's a little bit more intentional now, since he's done it 2 laps in a row. So a couple of different lines being taken by a couple of the drivers over the course of this race. Vanna preferring to really cut quite aggressively to the inside there through Hotel Corner. Kunze taking a little bit of a wider line. They're relatively equal coming off the corner, but it's an interesting little tidbit of information.
Did notice on our timing screen that the Swiss driver Grosjean, should I say, has dropped all the way down to 29th now, so had an issue out there on track and is all the way down the field. So had an issue, I believe it was into turn 1, and has dropped down absolute ton of positions there in this lap.
Yeah, so that's unfortunate for the Swiss driver there towards the very back of the order now. Having to see a couple of close positions. We'll see if Travasikov can actually get past Sokovikov here. Looks like Sokovikov will just kind of move out of the way at this point. There we go, just letting Ilya through, which is probably quite reasonable there for Kirill Sokovikov, given I think that BMW looks a little bit damaged towards the front end, so it doesn't look like he has too much pace here at the moment. But back towards the very front, because again you can see those alternate lines coming in effect between the drivers in the battle for the 2nd, 3rd and 4th position. I'm always super scared though that Vanna's going to commit too much to the inside there and inadvertently run into the side of Kunze.
I think Vanna is trying to use that curb in turn 2 just to help turn the car though. That's the thing. It appears that he's hitting that curb to try and unsettle the car, to help rotate the car, give him a tighter exit out of turn 2 going down towards turn 3, and it's not quite working out so far, but you can see those different lines, and that's why I said earlier on in this broadcast, you can't just copy what the car in front does with you as you, or else you're just going to stick in the same position. You've got to try different things. You've got to try and get in the eye line of the driver in front, which is what you see Vanna do there. And you can see the driver behind as well, really piling the pressure on Vanna. So, as I said it before, it's one of the most difficult places to be, where you're attacking one driver but having to defend from another at the exact same time.
Pincez is getting pretty close here on the back bumper of Vanna as well. He's applying his own sort of pressure, and it just ties into what you were talking about just then, Paul, with having to look ahead and behind. And Vanna, he might have to start looking a little bit more behind at this point with the progress that Pincez has been making. You can see again that characteristic tight line into Hotel Corner this time around. Does gain him a little bit of time there over Pincez. Just drops off the back slightly before they close up once again into the long left-hander. But again, you know, where is this opportunity going to come from? Because it doesn't seem like any of these drivers are going to crack at the moment. It might just be a matter of time, but they might also be good enough to keep it like this until the end.
You've got to keep that intensity up. You've got to keep that pressure on, because 20-minute sprint race, you might think, well, that's not exactly the longest race, but when you're involved in an intense battle like this, mentally it's draining. Look at that Kunze again, holding the inside line. I don't think he needs to take that line, especially this time. He's got plenty of a gap there, so he's just choosing to not give the car behind of Vanna the aero, and off into the gravel, and that's it. I said you got to keep the pressure on, and that's where it shows.
Yeah, just the grass and the gravel grabbed Jonas Vanna a little bit, and was struggling to get the car back onto the grey stuff, and has lost the position to Adam Pincez as a result. So Pincez has been promoted up into P3 here today, and he looks to try and lock onto the back of Kunze here in just a couple of moments. But yeah, that is, we were talking about that one mistake that can ruin your day. Well, it didn't ruin Jonas Vanner's entire day, but it ruined his chances of trying to get a podium.
Yeah, and now he's got to go on to the attack. He's got to just... It'll have rattled him a little bit with that mistake, and you can't let it affect you. You've got to just reset your brain. When something like that happens, if you've got somebody, say, working with you, say, it's like an engineer or a spotter, so to say, that half the time, that spotter, if you make a mistake like that, it's okay, forget it, move on, focus, keep your focus. And it's just now you've got to get re-energized, refocused on what you're doing out there. And Vanner at the moment, see that again, Kunze,
yeah,
not wanting to give the slipstream down the back straight there.
Yeah, he moves aggressively to the to driver's right-hand side there, even though he's not coming under threat. There's no way, any possibility that Adam Pincez would be able to get alongside into there. It's just maybe a force of habit there for Julian Kunze, maybe trying to break a little bit of the slipstream that's going on, but like we've already covered, it's very minimal here, and especially in these cars as well. So I'm not exactly sure what the overall goal is for Julian Kunze, or maybe that's it, you know? Maybe it is just to distract and confuse.
Yeah, it's... I think Kunze is definitely just not wanting to give a slipstream wherever he can. We've got battling further down as well as, well, Daniel Burka is trying to hang on to that 14th place. But, yeah, again, you're seeing different lines being taken by drivers and trying to, again, get in the eye line of the driver in front of you in the mirrors. Distract them. Try and do everything you can to put them off. Some drivers do use the flashing lights, especially in GT3s, to try and distract. It never bothered me as a driver personally, but you know, they'll try all the tricks in the book just to try and get the edge over the car in front.
There are also some series that restrict the use of the flashing lights due to it being, even in real life, due to it being too dazzling for the driver that's having to deal with the other end of it when they're ahead. So in some series there are penalties that get handed down for things like flashing the lights, but not so in this series. But we are heading in towards the final 6.5 minutes here of this one. Emre Cihan has been doing very, very well at the very front of the field. The Turkish driver has a just over 4-second advantage over Julian Kunze at the moment. Kunze still being chased down by Adam Pincez, though. They're within 0.3 of a second of each other. But again, we'll have to see if that battle comes to fruition for the final couple of laps of the race. And we have a smattering of battles further down the order as well. So everything kind of sort of stabilizing now, I would say. I think most of the chaotic stuff is over, so we can... it might be a little, although I'm saying that, I just saw someone get very close on my timing screen there. Bo Dixon and Quentin Vialati got very, very close there coming through that sequence of corners, but still single file they are.
Vialati, of course, showing off the redesigned front end of his car after using his chrome horn to try and force his way through, it looks like. Yeah, certainly has a bit of front end damage on that Audi, and was trying his best to get ahead of Dixon. Not quite happening at the moment. Vialati's been in and around that sort of 10th place area, trying to move past, and yeah, you can see how taking a wild line through Shell Corner. Not ideal, but it worked for him. So if it worked for you, if you look to be a bit of out of control, then, well, fair enough. If it works for you, keep going.
Yeah, you certainly can't complain in that situation. 4.5 minutes-ish as they head their way across the line now, at least this particular group of cars. I'm seeing P2 battle remain quite close. Pincez are just trying to chew away those final couple of tenths of a second to really lock onto the back of Kunze here. Vanna is slowly but surely making some progress as well to get back onto the back of these guys too. So things might close up once again in the battle for the second spot in a couple of moments. But is it too little too late? That's what you have to wonder. Can Pincez find anything to deal with Kunsa? And Kunsa almost takes a trip into the grass.
Yeah, pushing to the limit of adhesion and then some was Kunsa. I think Vanna just pushed that little bit too hard too soon in the race, so maybe worked his tyres a little bit more than these two drivers, and that's why he's just dropping off from these two. Look at them, the little bit of a snap there, held on to it. There's a bit of a heart-to-mouth moment for Pincez, but well, final corner, tighter line in, not really getting the run out the corner with that line. You need to take more of a sweeping line through there to carry the speed. It's all about the minimum apex speed, keeping that as high as possible, and one place where they keep it as high as possible is turns 1 and 2.
See Pincez trying to lean on the back bumper, coming through that very long turn number 2, and now in towards turn number 3, the Hasseröder long left-hander. Some drivers have been taking the entry to this more shallow than others, so it's not only the differences in terms of the line for the first couple of corners, but it's for the Hasseröder as well, where we've been seeing drivers have different philosophies about which way is the best way to take that corner, and of course that also depends potentially on the manufacturer and model of the car, but given that we're all Audis out here, it's probably less of a factor. Pincez is really trying though. He's trying to drive the wheels off of that thing, but you need probably a delta of a couple of tenths of a second, if not more per lap, to be able to make an overtake happen on pace here.
And even then, if you've got that pace, if the car in front knows exactly where and when to defend and where to place the car, then they really hold the upper hand around here. Pincez getting tight onto the apex there, and look at that defensive line from Kunsa into the final corner. He was parking it on the apex there. That's another defensive technique that you can use, because then the other car has to back up, and that allows you to get the run out of the corner down the straight.
There was a little bit of contact between those two as well. A bit of a love tap coming through the apex of the final turn. Maybe that is a sign of things to come. Kunsa pushes out quite wide through turn 2, but that is not too much of an issue, given you can just make it a double apex corner and swing back towards the secondary apex to get the power off the corner and get the speed. But Pincez is certainly not giving this one up. It's all a battle for P number 2 here in the GT4 support race. Gian has run away from the field in the race lead. 5 seconds is his advantage now, but it's still undecided about who comes out on top in this second place for those final couple of podium spots.
Yeah, time running out here. If you're going to be making a move, you need to be making it now and making it stick. They'll get one more lap out of this race, so time is running out though, and Pincez not quite close enough here down into Shell, though he gets right up to the rear bumper. Try and force those different lines, try and force Kunsa to go defensive here. We saw how Kunsa took that tight line last lap. He takes a wider entry into the final corner. He knows that he can then hold that tight line on the last lap around that final corner, Kunsa, but 5.5 seconds, it just goes to show how much these two fighting has slowed them down compared to your leader.
Yeah, but Gian was doing a good job regardless. Again, the differences in the line through turn 2 brings these two drivers close. They narrowly avoid the grass on the driver's left-hand side there before they hit the brakes in towards the Hasseröder. Time has expired. So Emre Gian, he only has this partial lap to be able to complete before he can come across the line as your race winner, but it's still all undecided for P2. Kunsa versus Pincez as the German ahead for the moment, but that could all change, especially if Pincez decides to get a little bit more physical about it than he has been doing. Now coming up in towards the sort of middle sector through the S's section there, swing it in through the right-hand there in towards the back straight. You can see further down the road that Qian has decided to really check out by 5.5 seconds. The gap between P1, P2, P3 also extending in this instance, so I don't think it's going to happen here for Pincez as long as Kunze can get through the final corner okay. There is Emre Qian heading his way through the final corner now to take the GT4 support race win here in the ADAC GT Masters Esports Championship. Battle for P2 comes out of the final corner. Julian Kunze has been able to hold on. With all the pressure being applied to his back bumper, he still comes home second step on the podium.
Absolutely tremendous race in between those two towards the end. Intense all the way. Speaking of intense, going on all the way down your field. By the way, Capet from 3rd place to the back up to 18th in the end. And the KTM with a drag to the line, not able quite to get with John Munro. So Suranyaga ends up in 24th place. But yeah, what a drive from Emre Qian. Brilliant stuff, and was absolutely dominant out there.
Yeah, he simply got away well at the very front of the field and didn't look back, and the fighting behind him certainly helped his case. So Emre Qian wins the GT4 support race here at Oschersleben. Julian Kunze P2, Adam Pincez P3. That was a fantastic battle towards the very end there. Jonas Vanner and Markovic bring things down to the top 5. Ottaviani, Otterbach, Adamczyk, Witzvogt and Dixon round out the top 10 in the GT4s here today. And then you have the likes of Perete, Viate, Sufov, Berker, Stemkurski, Dinier as well down in P16 there, and a lot of the non-Audis also towards the very back as well. So the likes of Krivieri, the KTM of Jager, Sokovikov in the BMW, and the Porsche there towards the very back of things as well. So as the session finishes up there, we will, of course, take our time to breathe and try and reflect on this GT4 support event. But we can't rest for too long because we have GT3 endurance race coming up, Paul.
Yeah, so non-stop action. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I'm certainly enjoying my first outing here. It's, as I say, non-stop. It's great stuff to see. And yeah, those GT4s, I said that they can give you a good race. You can run close in those cars, and they certainly showed that there. One or two little bit of contact, but I think really that battle for second place was the intense one. It was the one where all the action was throughout that one, and yeah, just able to hold on to there was Kunze at the end.
And we saw a couple of situations, well, where there were mistakes starting to, these sorts of micro mistakes, I would say, start to settle in, just pushing slightly wide, it's not much in the grand scheme of things, but if you're consistently doing that and you're consistently pushing a little bit wider, a little bit wider, a little bit wider, all of a sudden you find yourself in the grass and gravel and you have to give up the position, just like Vanner did a little bit earlier on in the race when he was involved in that particular battle.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's, as I said, when you're involved in a tight, intense battle like that, it takes a lot out of you mentally when you're constantly trying to outthink the driver in front of you, but also outthinking the driver that's right on your tail. When you're that middle car, there is so much going on in your brain. And one little mistake, just running wide over the outside of the curb and catching that grass, that's it. Third place gone in an instant, and it's just all it took, one single mistake.
It does, and that is a very stark warning for the drivers that are competing in the upcoming endurance race that we'll have in a couple of moments' time. Not only now is it a mistake on track with regards to pushing wide or spinning or anything like that, it's also you have to make sure your strategy's nailed. Because if you mess up the strategy, you fall back a couple of positions, you're more than likely not going to gain that back.
One thing I did take note of was the amount of drivers in the first practice session before the sprint race that were trying out that run into pit road. It's quite a tight pit entry and pit exit here. So it's important to not only just get your position right of getting the tyres absolutely on as quickly as possible and your strategy call right. But getting onto and off of pit road can also buy you seconds in some cases. So if you're able to hit your marks perfectly, coming onto pit road, getting that pit limiter on, getting yourself into your pit stall, getting that tyre change and getting out and getting it off the pit limiter absolutely at the right point, that sets those good drivers from the better drivers. Those better drivers will have spent that as extra time, that extra half hour to an hour sometimes for them just practicing pit entry, pit exit, pit entry, pit exit. Get it nailed on.
And due to the track being the way it is, I know we've covered it so many times over the race, but maybe the undercut might be particularly potent here, especially if you can get out into clear traffic. If you can really get those good outlaps in before everyone else comes down in, you can gain that track position, and then even though you're on the older tires, you can possibly hold on to that track position a little bit better for the second half of the race than you would do otherwise. But then again, we haven't seen the type of racing here just yet when pit stops are involved. So it might just be that the better tires might be the edge that drivers need to get themselves past people.
Could well be. It gives you more solid braking performance into corners, better cornering performance, of course, as well, and getting on the power better. With it being a 40-minute race, though, tyre degradation with the GT3 car, it doesn't really take that much effect. It will give them an edge having newer tyres. There's no doubt about that. Being on new rubber is often better than being on that worn rubber. That's like the worn rubber through the race. So you will see it, but you mentioned it right there. Clear air. You need to get that clear air. You will find somebody, as soon as they see the opportunity, dive onto pit road, get themselves some clear air, get some fast laps in, and hope that that other driver that they were competing with doesn't react straight away, is maybe still embroiled in a battle, not thinking about you, thinking about the other car, and you'll be able to sail past them in that pit stop phase.
Well, we are all loaded up into the server, so let's just take a look at the, currently final couple of minutes of practice, but this is now the endurance race for the GT3. So 40 minutes, technically 42, considering we need to do the formation lap, and we'll also have that mandatory pit stop as well. Drivers have a little bit of a leeway exactly when they can take that in the middle of the race, so that's where the whole strategy with regards to undercuts and overcuts comes from. But it could be that element that adds just that little bit more intrigue to these races compared to what we saw in the sprint race event, where everyone just kind of got caught.
Yeah, and that's, look at the speed that they can carry onto pit road here as well, through that final chicane onto pit road. So yeah, I believe it is an 80km/h speed limit down pit road here as well. So you've got to get your car onto the anchors, slowed down, and really do that. And of course, the reverse grid, we've not touched on that really yet. That reverse grid for the top 10 from the sprint race, that's going to add another element. Moritz Lerner starting in 10th place. Does he take a pit stop early, try and get himself some clean air? We've seen how quick he is around this track. Maybe get himself that clean air to try and move himself forward. So strategy is king in a race like this.
It absolutely is. There's your pole sitter for this event. That is Tim Yarshall, who managed to finish P10 in the sprint race. That means he goes to reverse grid pole position. So he has a great opportunity to get a fantastic result here today. But again, it's the same sort of thing for him as it is with Lerner, in that he needs to keep all of the hungry sharks behind him that might be faster than him in terms of clear air pace. And he also has to absolutely nail the pit stop strategy as well. Just come down in at the exact right time to get that stop.
Yeah, exactly. If you've got a bit of a gap at the front, if you're able to pull away, say 2, maybe 3 seconds at the front in this race, you can afford a little bit of time and a little bit of leeway before you do head onto pit road. So it'll give you just that little bit of a respite to be able to pick and choose when you want to come onto pit road. And if you can get a big enough gap so that then you could come onto pit road later, you'll be quicker in the later phase with that slightly fresher rubber. So, yeah, interesting to see how the strategy pans out in this one, because this is going to be a thinking person's race right here.
Yeah, I think so too, and of course it was always the interesting element in the 2020 races as well, when we also had the mandatory pit stops in effect, and we saw some drivers go super long on their first stint to then put the fresh tyres on for the closing portions of the race to really go chasing for positions, and of course we saw the opposite as well with the extreme undercuts coming into effect as well. So practice is over. We will skip over qualifying since we know what the grid is already. It's the results from the sprint race with the top 10 cars inverted. So Moritz Lohner will start P10, and of course Tim Yarshall will start in P number 1. That's the situation here heading into the endurance race. 40 minutes of racing about to get itself started here. I certainly can't wait for it. The drivers are getting themselves to the starting grid now, and of course it will not be a standing start. They will form up on that formation lap as manually, and then we'll get the race going after one lap of pacing.
Yeah, we saw that in race 1, and it worked really well in race 1, I must say. Everybody behaved themselves and made sure that they were nice and clean. So yeah, we won't be getting excited here because this isn't the race start. This is just the start of the pacing lap. So yeah, Yarshall at the front gets away, leaves just a small 11s down on the grid there, and is now pulling away. Single file, as we saw in the sprint race, single file all the way through to Shell Curve. So Yarshall, we saw how he struggled a little bit in qualifying initially, but then was able to get into that top 10 in qualifying. Held on to that 10th place in the sprint race, and now in this endurance race. Pressure's on. Really, you just have to hang on to start with, hold your position, hold the rest of the queue up, and then if you're not able to pull away, think about that strategy game, because others, they're behind you and they feel that they're faster, will be looking to pit early.
So just to refresh the memory of the results of the sprint race, of course, top 10 inverted here. So Tim Yarshall, pole position. Florian Hasser is that car second in line in the Audi. The Giorgio Boldi, that's Bentley behind him. That's the Hungarian there, as we got Nikodem Wisniewski P4, Marco Pajic P5, Christopher Högfeldt P6, Kevin Siggy P7, Jack Keithley P8, Jacob Brzezinski P9, Moritz Lohner, points leader currently, and sprint race winner, double champion. He starts in P10 here today. We've got Lucas Muller, Ben Spanky, Martin Barner, Fubo Kazubon, and Mark Garsner down to P15. The rest of them, of course, exactly where they finished in the sprint race. So drivers forming up 2 by 2. Of course, we saw the start commands come quite late in the sprint race. I wonder if that's going to be the same again here as well for the endurance.
Well, don't forget, it is the pole sitter who controls it. The green flag may get waved, but it is the pole sitter who controls it, because you cannot overtake until you reach that start line.
And you have to remain in your lanes, of course, as well. You can't just hop across to either lane, but here we go. Through the final corner then. The endurance race here in the ADAC GT Masters Esports Championship, round number 1 at Oschersleben. We're powered by MBW Mobility Plus. Don't forget, they're waiting for the command. The command does come earlier, and they're off for their way. Florian Hasser actually getting pushed by a car behind. Trying now to try and find the inside, and Tim Yarshall coming down in towards turn number 1. Can Yarshall hold on to P1? Yes, he can. Now it's a fight between Hasser and Baldy. Someone's off in the background. I think that was Christopher Högfeldt that has had major problems early on. Now Wisniewski's looking to try and improve position over Florian Hasser. They're neck and neck into the Hasser road, and they make a little bit of contact through the apex there, but Wisniewski able to come out on top of Hasser, and then there's Pajic in P5 there as well, so a couple of positions shuffled in the top couple.
Moritz Lohner has had an absolute nightmare of a start, and it's dropped down the field. I could see him in the background of the shot. There he is. You can see him almost going 4 wide through the right there. That doesn't work out, and there's contact between them. But Lohner down to 22nd. An absolute nightmare start for the race, the sprint race winner. And of course, points. well, there's not many points for 22nd to 21st, just 1 point there.
Here he goes, looking to the inside on David Nagy here. He's looking desperate, trying to gain these positions. Nagy's able to hold on to that P20 though. Lerner again continuing to look down the inside here. You can just see how desperate he is because he knows this start of the race has gone oh so wrong for him, and now he looks to try and recover positions. Yarshel, where's he? Where'd he go?
He's dropped down the order on our timing screen to the back of the field.
Oh, he's gone through the terrain, I'm afraid. So that must be a retirement then for Tim Yarshel. I'm reminded of the sort of a famous car TV show saying, "Oh, is he not coming then?" And I don't think Tim Yarshel is coming towards the end of this race. Unfortunately, I didn't quite spot what happened to him, but inevitably that will be a tow.
I think that's a technical problem. I think maybe sort of some form of technical issue with the PC or with an internet connection, because you've got to remember you're racing against each other over the internet. It equates to if you have a technical failure with your car. So I mean, it's really unfortunate that's happened to the man who started on pole position, but it does give Baldi then the race lead at the moment, with Wisniewski behind is pushing all the way, as well as Hasse.
Yeah, so Baldi gained a whole bunch out of that start of the race with all the confusion. Wisniewski, great for him to be able to improve positions, so the two Bentleys lead everyone else around at the moment here. Florian Hasse third in line, Marko Pejic P4 as they head their way across the line to complete yet another lap here. Having a look further down the order though, I did see some door-to-door racing, and well, it was Dorneden looking on the inside of Martin Barner in towards turn number 1 that time around, but not quite going to be able to get the overlap. They'll follow each other very closely, nose to tail, through Hotel Curve, but again, nothing doing in terms of the looks down the inside here. But again, that's bits of drama here on the first lap, with Yarshel having perhaps technical problems, and we've also had Moritz Lohner have an awful start as well, getting cycled back up to down into P18 now, so he has been able to improve a couple of positions. But yeah, for those drivers that we were expecting to do well, it hasn't really, has it?
I think Moritz Lohner is trying to basically prove to us that he can overtake at this circuit, because he was down in 22nd at one point. So there you go, up to 18th. He's on a recovery drive now. Look at that queue of traffic. It's just one long queue of cars. And when you're all in a queue like that, any slipstream that you get is being negated by the car in front also getting a slipstream. So really, you're having to do it on your own pace. And we've seen that Lerner is the quickest driver out there, as there's a move in front, Reitfeld, moving ahead of Viducci. And that's going to be a change of position, so the Dutch driver ahead of the Italian. And here comes Moritz then, looking to try and gain another spot here, and does.
Gifted as well. I don't think that was Viducci fighting there. He knows what the state of play is, even though he will be well within his rights to try and defend that position for all his life. He decides to just kind of move out of the way and make sure that he doesn't trouble Lohner too much. You just see Lohner just sort of weave back and forth though, and that is usually a sign of I'm frustrated with you, or actually thank you in terms of driver speak.
Yeah, usually frustration if they're weaving, because if you're weaving down a straight, that's actually slowing you down slightly, so that's more of a frustration thing. Or maybe he's not got his tyres into the place where he wants them to be. Of course, they'll be running a slightly different setup, not completely, but slightly different for this one, with it being a 40-minute race. So yeah, those drivers, they've sorted themselves out, and in fact pretty much the rest of the field has been behaving themselves, and a nice clean start to this race. Good to see so far.
It is. Things tightening up though inside the top 10. Brzezinski still has that flashy lights issue. So maybe something is stuck with his car. I mean, look at this, side by side between Rietveld and Jajowski. Jajowski looking down the inside of Rietveld, at least initially coming down in towards turn number 1, but kind of butchered the apex there of the hotel corner. Now Moritz Lohner can dive his way down the inside, and that's a position that Loren's going to take every day of the week, although Jajowski's going to try and come back at him here around the outside of the Hasserode, but finds no success.
Well, that was Jajowski actually losing 2 positions there, because Rietveld, of course, moving forward ahead of him, and now Lerner falling through, and then even side by side behind as well. Nunninghoff and Nange were battling it out as well behind. So plenty of action out there, plenty of action here for this 10th, 11th place, and Casabon has only just contact. That's more than contact. That's a bit of afters there, I think, through that corner.
Yeah, I think so as well. You can see that was the body language you were talking about, Paul. After that, Casabon just kind of weaved back and forth in front of Muller there, just saying, that's not how we want to race here. Give you a bit of a finger wag, and it's hopefully Muller got the message there, as it has kind of stacked up everyone behind here, and as a result, you can see Pilsker and Rietveld go side by side down the pit straight. Rietveld trying to reposition and try to look for the inside of turn 1, but that is not usually an overtaking opportunity that is easily capitalized on there into that section of the circuit. But we're getting some great little fights here in the mid-pack. I'm loving it.
It's brilliant. Up the front, it's pretty close together still at the front, so it's not really adding separation there. The front 8 all pretty much in a line, and then 9th place is about 2 seconds back then in that one. So a little bit of separation for the front 8 there, and that's not what these drivers will want to see. And they're heavily battling each other, they're slowing each other down, and that just exacerbates that allows that front pack to pull away, and that's why you see some desperation here out there on track. And Rietveld showing his nose again. That's not really an overtaking spot there, although we did see that just a lap or 2 ago, but just holding on for the time being in that Team Redline car. Look to the inside. This is a favourite overtaking opportunity into that final corner, the dive in, but he's slower on corner exit. That gives anybody else then the chance to maybe follow through and take advantage, but not forthcoming there.
No, it's not, but it seems like, I get the feeling, some drivers are starting to figure out how to battle at this racetrack. We've seen multiple drivers decide to go for that move in towards the final corner to try and wrestle the inside away, and it does ruin their momentum coming off the corner, of course, but at least it gives them a slight chance of making something happen into turn 1 and turn 2. So, it's exciting to see that sort of development over the course of an event like this, because, of course, these guys wouldn't have raced with each other in this large pack before at this track, perhaps, in these exact same cars, in this exact same balance of performance on this exact same patch. So, even the drivers are learning out there, even when it comes to race time.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to sort of have a look further down as well on the timing whilst you're talking there, to see how a couple of the drivers who were trying to recover after terrible sprint races. Garcia's up to 24th in the Mercedes, so good work for the Spaniard there. Now, Isaac Price actually had moved further forward, but had an issue on this lap, which has dropped him back to 30th and last place of the running cars. Kevin Siggy is making some moves here. Now they're getting onto pit road. This is the first of your pit stops here.
Yeah, that's the pit stops coming in. There's Jojo Baldy coming in. What's the damage as far as what people, how much the field is coming in? There's Wisniewski's in. Pajic is also in as well. So Siggy is the first of the drivers to stay out here. Jack Keithley following in his slipstream, and we've also got Ben Spanky. So a good chunk of the front of the field has come down in at the first opportunity they'll get to try and get the pit stop phase underway. We see Nikodem Wisniewski, and who's that? Is that Baldy trying to battle off a pit lane? Absolutely neck and neck coming down through pit exit, but no, it's going to be ruined because Baldy got himself a speeding penalty on the lane.
Oh, too enthusiastic. I said you've got to do it absolutely perfectly, and unfortunately for Baldy, it's not good enough. A drive-through penalty for speeding. All that hard work has gone to nothing now. So Baldy is the leading car of those that have pitted, But right now, he might as well be at the back of that pack because he's going to have to drive through once again.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate, and I know the temptation is there by drivers to sort of disable the pit lane speed limiter, maybe creep a couple of kilometers an hour above the pit lane speed limit. It doesn't always catch you, but it did catch Jojo Baldi. He just overdid it a little bit too much there on pit exit. Gets caught with that drive-through penalty. That's so unfortunate there. A couple more drivers coming down in. Jack Keithley did come down in, so there he is. So he was the one of the first drivers to sort of stay out, but Siggy was the driver that was in the race lead. So this is going to be interesting to see what the situation is with both Siggy and what is going to be Wisniewski now coming off the pit lane. There goes Siggy. Where is now Wisniewski? They're coming down the back straight right now. Jack Keithley, no.
Well, that's two now that we've seen. I mean, maybe they're a little bit out of practice from racing here. Baldi does lead the group of cars that have pitted. There you go, Jack Keithley with a drive-through penalty. Oh my goodness, it's so, you say about it, it's so tempting, isn't it? It's so tempting to just get on the, I can do it, I can just squeeze that extra kilometre out, but no, it's not having it. Here comes Banky onto pit road now. So we've had a couple of pit parties now, there's just a few left out there. The question is, how long do those drivers now stay out there?
That's the question. I think right now you're caught between two decisions. So I think from this point forwards, you kind of have to keep with it now. You've missed the boat somewhat. Those drivers that got the fresher tyres are starting to get them up to temperature and put some good laps on them. So now you're kind of committed to going long on this strategy. There's Martin Barner, who's the front driver that has committed to going at least an extra lap here compared to everyone else. Pilsker about 3.5 seconds behind him. Meanwhile, a couple of other drivers have come down towards pit lane. Max Pfeiffer, Ben Spanky, Nico Nuninghoff all come down in here. Let's see where they fall out in relation to everyone else. There is Ben Spanky. Where does he come out in the traffic? Because there's a whole bunch of traffic. He finds a bit of space though, which I think would be beneficial because he can just sort of work on his own and not be too concerned about others around him, and he's got a train of cars to catch ahead as well.
And behind the battling Brzezinski and Siggy as well, so yeah, about 1.5 seconds behind those two, but as you say, got that little bit of a space now, can just get those tyres into the working range and really work them now. For that one, Baldi and Keithley. Well, Jack Keithley has taken his drive-through penalty, it appears, because he's down in 29th place, but moves up at the front. There's the next bunch of pitters heading down to pit road. Barner, one of those, and I believe Pilsker as well.
Yeah, so Barner and Pilsker, drivers on pit lane at the moment. Of course, this pit stop cycle has really sort of spread out the field a little bit. Of course, in that first stint that we had, we saw everyone kind of in one big long train, but as is the natural separation when it comes to pit stop phases, everyone just kind of keeps their distance coming after they've done their pit stops, which is why you see decent gaps between drivers right now. But let's see, coming off of the pit lane in the background there, we saw Pilsker and of course the other driver, but yeah, at the moment it's just kind of waiting for everything to cycle through, and I have to wonder how much value these guys are going to get from going long on the tyres, because yes, they're losing time right now, but they will be able to put the fresher tyres on, yeah, however marginal that may be in GT3 machines, and try and find some positions later on in the race, but we know how difficult that is.
Yeah, I think this race was always going to be more about getting the early pit stop, getting that pit stop out of the way and trying to get yourself a little bit of clean air. But the thing is, if those drivers at the front, like Rudinger and Garcia, got that little bit of clean air, which they have, they can afford to go a little bit later on. Because they're not getting held up by traffic, they can push and push and push until the very last minute when they head onto pit road.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the last laps. For example, for Nikodev Wisniewski, he did a 1:22.861 on that last lap. Someone like Nestor Garcia, who is still out on old tyres, he's doing a 1:23.456 on that last lap. And it seems like the old tyre runners are kind of all on 120, sort of mid 123s at the moment, whereas the new tyres are on low 123s. So that might be a natural difference in terms of the drivers, because we saw a lot of the strong drivers come down in early on, so that might be a difference there. But it also might be the sort of slight difference in the tyre difference that we're seeing at the moment.
What we're seeing is Hasse then in 7th place, trying to put the pressure on Wisniewski, because effectively this is the battle for the lead in this race, is it not? Because of course those drivers who've yet to go onto pit road, will take them longer than 21.5 seconds to traverse pit lane, get their tyres done and get back out again. So really these two are pushing. I believe Garcia is heading onto pit road now. That's going to be the next of your pitters.
Yeah, so there he is, getting his one required pit stop service. You'll see him just slide down the timing tower on the left-hand side as the rest of the drivers pass him coming down the pit straight there. So he is the only driver to pit on this lap. So the rest of them that hadn't pitted just yet, they all decided to go at least one more. So that's the decision. Rudiger, Hoogveld, Price, Runner, sorry, and those are the only ones that have decided to stay out now. So we've got 4 drivers basically holding it out on that long stint, long first stop strategy, shall we say. Everyone else decided to come down even well before the halfway point.
Put your teeth back in there, Connery. That's easy for you to say, but yeah, it's still a really close race out there. Even though we've had those pit stops, and pit stops do generally spread out the field in these types of races, you still see a little mistake from Hasse there, just running wide onto the grass. Maybe just gives half an opportunity for the car behind to catch up, but not quite happening there. But yeah, these 3 here are battling effectively for the win. Brzezinski down in 5th place, effectively behind Kevin Siggy. So Siggy has been able to get ahead of Brzezinski in all of this.
Yeah, that does seem to be the case. We kind of expected to see a couple of swaps in amongst all the different pit stop strategies going on with exactly which lap people decide to come down in on. But we're running on board with Marko Pejic here as he tries to keep himself in contention there for P number 6, at least P number 6 on track at the moment. Technically, it's P number 2 effectively. But again, we'll see how it files out in terms of those guys that have gone long on the strategy. Of course, they'll start initially behind for the start of their final stints, but how much progress can they make through the field with the tyre advantage? Like I said at the start, just before this race, that might be all the advantage people need to try and get by.
Yeah, you never know. It's I mean, we saw the difference. You read it out, the lap time difference. How these fresher tyred drivers are really pushing on and getting those extra tenths of a second out of the tyres. As I say, you're not really that much difference with a GT3 tyre in terms of the tyre performance over a race that's 40 minutes long. But we are past the halfway point, and with Rudiger, Price, Hoogveld and Rona still on to pit road. By the way, Price has moved up into 2nd place on the road at the moment. He made it past Hoogveld, who I think had an issue out there, but he was a couple of seconds ahead of Isaac before that, and is now 3 seconds behind. But those that are on the long run now, they're in it for the long run. They're going to take that pit stop. You want to take it maybe sort of with quarter of an hour left, because if you're doing that now, you want to give yourself some time to use that advantage. There's no point leaving it until the last minute of the pit window to take that tyre stop. You want to give yourself an opportunity of using some new tyres, as Rudiger still staying out there.
Yeah, had the option to dive down on towards pit lane, didn't do so. Isaac Price also deciding that he wants to go at least one more lap here. We could see these guys potentially going very deep, maybe another, potentially, a handful of minutes, maybe up towards 5, 6, 7 minutes more, and really trying to get the fuel tank dry in those cars to then get the fresh tyres on, get the lighter fuel load as well, and then go chasing for positions at the very end here. But it's all about trying to strike that balance, though, of losing time now and gaining time later, which makes strategic fights like this so interesting.
Yeah, it's tremendous. I like this type of racing where you've got that strategy element. Yes, I like a you know, bare knuckle fight of a race when it's just, you know, like we saw in the sprint race where it was just purely down to what happens on the track. Having that strategy element in there, it just adds that little bit extra. As we say, penalties came into it as well. Jack Keithley and Baldi as well, down in 25th and 26th at the moment after having those drive-through penalties for speeding in pit road. I believe that there are only 2 that did get a speeding in pit road penalty here. It just so happened to be 2 drivers who were performing rather well at the start of this race.
Yeah, it's that's just how racing goes sometimes. You know, it's such a cruel mistress, and it takes away the developing battles sometimes. But we'll continue on with what we have. 17 minutes left remaining in this one. Still 4 drivers yet to come down on towards pit lane for their scheduled stops. Everyone else kind of did it very, very early. We even saw a good group of drivers kind of just dive down immediately once the pit lane window had opened. So that's the strategy that most have gone with, and we conjectured about this before coming into this race, where drivers would want to try and get it done early just to keep track position. But again, it's still that unknown element. There's still that couple of % chance that these drivers that have gone long in this strategy will be able to do something when it comes to their second stints. I'm not expecting them to win the race, but you know, it could turn out beneficial for them in terms of getting into good points paying positions.
If you're, and here's another thing, if you're, like we mentioned about, you know, having to do different things to drivers on, you know, on track, maybe different lines. If you're further down in the field, if you're say outside of the points at the first part of the race, and this pit stop phase happens, why not try something different? Because it could end up panning out to be your saving grace. It might get you a handful of points towards the end of the race, because other drivers, if they all pile in at the same time, they're all going to be pretty much in and around each other when they come out the pit road. So if you're able to get that clear air and do well compared to those that you would have been battling further down in the order, then maybe, just maybe, it might sneak yourself a point or 2.
And yeah, a point or 2 can very much matter in this championship, let me tell you that. There's sort of close little moments coming that I'm spotting up and down the field here, especially in the mid-pack, where Thibaut Casabon and Jeffrey Rydveld have been close for the past while, and you can really count Peter Pilska in that battle as well, down in 16th place as the trio of cars dive their way into turn 1. We've got a close little thing going on behind them as well, between Jajowski, Gassner, Fiduci, Nuninghoff for E17 through 20. So you can watch that space for any potential action as well. But and even towards the very back, where you've got Nestor Garcia trying to make some progress on Michael Raschel here, looking to the outside for the Hasselroder, looking to try and get the speed off, but I think that Audi was just parked in the exact wrong place in the acceleration zone for Garcia.
Yeah, and that's one thing that you can do if you're the defending car. You can just hold that tight line and really scupper that car behind from being able to get cut back and to get on the power earlier than you. So yeah, you can do that a little bit. Brzezinski still with his stuck button, it appears, and still with the flashing headlights. We don't know exactly what's going on there, but we're basically assuming that maybe he's got a bit of a hardware failure with one of his buttons.
Yeah, potentially. We'll dive back to P24 battle though, because Garcia is all over the back of Baldy. Meanwhile, we've had our one of our four holdouts, shall we say, in the strategy. They've come down on towards pit lane. So that's Christopher Rodner. Rodner has come down on towards the pit lane in the only Corvette as well. So. I mean, you have to do a Hail Mary attempt if you're perhaps not in the most favoured car at this circuit and in this championship. There he is. Christopher comes off the pit lane with coming up to about 13 minutes left to go.
Yeah, that was the driver who was in 4th place of that queue, so the back of that queue of cars.
Oh no!
Oh no! Not hitting the pit wall on exit. Oh, I said about the difference between good drivers and the better drivers is just spending that time coming into and out of pit road. I think we may have just seen that there.
Yeah, I think Rodner was hoping that we perhaps weren't focusing him in terms of the in-game cameras there. He thought, oh well, I'm a minor player in this battle. They're not going to focus on me, right? And I was like, yeah, we saw that. We all saw that, Christopher. Maybe someone
saw what? We didn't see anything.
No, of course not. Of course not. But that's the first sign, though, of maybe the rest of those drivers, the 3 at the front, start to think about coming down in. They haven't just yet, though, but that might put the idea in their minds that now's a good time to go with 12 minutes left remaining. They're still continuing to lose, I would say, anything from 0.3 to half a second a lap compared to the drivers that have pitted. So it's going to be still a tough ask for them to do anything coming into the final stages of the race, but they will have a huge tyre advantage compared to everyone else, and let's see some overtakes then, shall we?
Oh, there we go. Onto pit road, Rudinger and Isaac Price as well. I wouldn't be surprised to see Hugfeld heading onto pit road as well. Nope, staying out there on track is Hugfeld. Wants to get a lap in the lead. That I think is pretty much that little bit of a glory time at the front of the standings.
I don't know. Someone check. Do we have a fastest lap point? I don't think we do. So, so yeah, or rather a lead lap point. I don't think we do. But Leon Rudinger down on towards pit lane. Same with Isaac Price as well. So that's the situation there on pit lane. We have to wonder though where they come out in relation to everyone else. How much time have they indeed lost, and how much time can they make up in the final 11 minutes of this event? So. Christopher Hugfeld, of course, he's the only driver that stayed out in that situation. Everyone else started to come off of pit lane now, of those drivers that had done so. So Rudinger and Isaac Price, there we go, coming off of pit lane. So where are they coming out? So P19, now P20, as those two cars file through. So Rudinger P20 at the moment, and I think Price kind of got into an awful situation, out immediately into traffic.
Yeah, but has managed to bull his way past Garcia, so able to gain a place. But worth pointing out then, 20th place for Rudinger, that is 2 points in the championship. So not a bad place to come out in if you were further down in the order before the pit stops happened. So that's what I said. If you were in that bottom 10 drivers at the start of this race and you weren't really progressing forward, it's worth playing that long game and trying that out. I did notice something as well at the front of your field. Wisniewski has actually been able to pull away a little bit from Florian Hasse. So nice little gap there, Wisniewski at the front of your field. And Hasse now is more concerned about the car behind him than the car in front.
I think so too. Pejic has been making some very, very good progress over the last few laps in particular to try and reel that gap in. Brzezinski on the back of Siggy in the background there as well, continuing to be a big threat. But Christopher Hugfeld, he's finally come down on towards pit lane with 10 minutes left remaining and is now going to rejoin the track in just a couple of moments. There's Garcia squeezing through, there's Jack Keithley, and gets out behind Adam Pinces, but with the tyre advantage, I would have thought Hugfeld would be able to make short work of the driver ahead of him.
With 9 minutes remaining, you're not really getting to use that much of that advantage, are you? That's where I said you want to maybe look at that 15-minute mark to come onto pit road and have the most use of that advantage.
Did something happen with Fiduci? Because I'm finding Fiduci's falling down the order right now, and there was a big cluster back here in the bottom end of the top 20 that has kind of yet to sort itself out. There is a car slow. Rütfeld.
Yes. Is that that must be a steward's decision then?
Let's see.
Because I can't see him voluntarily just slowing down there. So yeah, Rütfeld down to 15th.
It did come through. It was Rütfeld versus Pilsker. Rütfeld took the slowdown penalty for that, which is 3 seconds, but he took it on the racing line, which you're not allowed to do. So he had to take an extra slowdown, this time a 6-second slowdown, and a single strike on his license as well. So that is a pretty serious offence there for Rütfeld, taking a slowdown penalty, but on the racing line, which causes so many issues, as you can imagine.
Yeah, that is a big no-no for me. You've got to get offline if you're taking a slowdown penalty that's being handed to you by the stewards, because you're putting other people's, as well as yourself, at risk in that race, because somebody might not realise. You could have a gaggle of cars behind, and I've had it before where I'm at the back of a queue of cars, and all of a sudden they just part, and all of a sudden you're faced with a car that's going considerably slower than you. So it can cause so many problems if you take that penalty on the line, and in my opinion, the stewards have made the right call there to give a further penalty.
Rudinger trying to use that fresh tyre advantage when he's going up against Lucas Müller here. He did a good job to try and catch the gap that was originally there coming off the pit lane, and now here comes the true test of the fresher tyres. Can he squeeze through at any point? He can try and get a good drive off of the final corner there. He can hang with a little bit of the slipstream as well. Then he can angle maybe towards the inside for turn number 1. Yes, he is having a look, but dives back in line and decides not to go for it. But are there any alternate lines he can use with the fresher rubber to try and capitalize on this? He can hang so closely coming through Hotel Curve. They're side by side going on behind, by the way, between Isaac Price and Michael Rachel, as Isaac Price able to capitalize on that one.
Yeah, so now you're seeing those fresher tyres now coming into play, and they are moving forwards. Yeah, Rudinger and Price, they were about a second and a half between them when they came onto pit road, so Price has been held up a little bit more because he's had to work through more traffic. But look at the line that Rudinger's able to take. He's just so much more confident, so taking such a tighter line. Yes, it's for 17th place, but this is exactly what they have rolled the dice for. It's making it count now. Yes, you've got that tyre advantage, but you've got to make it count.
That's the task at hand for Rudinger. He hasn't been able to find a way by on Müller just yet. He's sort of been stuck behind it for about a lap and a half at this point. Still no way through for Rudinger, again looking for that good drive off of the final corner to make something happen into turn 1, but he was reluctant to go for this move last lap. He's similarly reluctant to go for the move this lap as well. So that's the situation. He's going to try and dive it in and try and get to the outside through Hotel, but nothing doing there either. Gets the speed off the corner, maybe looking to the inside into Hasselrode, but nothing doing there either. So this is the thing I was scared about with the fresh tyre runners. They're just, even though they have the advantage, it's still not working out in terms of passes.
Yeah, he was trying to, going into turn 1, he was trying to set up turn 2 by taking that wide entry through the first part of 2. It meant that he was trying to get the cut back on the corner exit, carry the speed out of the corner the Hotel heading towards Hasselrode. Not able to quite make that work, but he's showing his intentions here to try and do it. But we've seen how Müller is such a tough cookie to crack, and he is a intense defensive driver. And we've seen that all day. Look at the slide. I mean, you don't really want to be doing that, even if they are newer tyres.
Yeah, just to put a little bit too much heat into them. It can ruin them at least for a couple of laps before they cool down. So you got to be so careful, and you can see he's lost quite a bit of time as a result of all that sliding. So Romain's now about 0.6 of a second behind Mahle. So again, you just have to be careful, and it looks like maybe Rudiger's already taken the best out of those fresher tyres.
And that's it. You only get really that advantage for the first 3 or 4 laps, and then after that, the tyre settles down into pretty much the pace that the other drivers have there. So you get that bite, that initial bite out of those tyres for that first 3 or 4 laps, and then it settles down through the rest of your stint. So that's why I said you wanted to maybe just give yourself a little bit more time to take advantage of it. Look at that, down the inside, contact between the two of them. Oh, not quite happening between them into McDonald's, but he's showing his intent there as we've got a car trying different lines in front of them as well.
Yeah, I think that was Nuninghoff looking all over the back of Rietveld a little bit further down the road there, but you can see the desperation now for Rudiger in particular. He's feeling frustrated that the fresh tyres haven't really worked in his favour in terms of getting passes done, so now he's looking to try and go for alternate methods, I would suppose, with a little bit of a shot to the bodywork of the car a little bit earlier on, half a lap ago. But into T1 this time, again, it's going to have to be a move that set up contact from behind. Isaac Price coming in at a rate of knots, and you can just see how stuck Rudiger got in that his partner coming down on towards the pit lane in terms of the long strategy is locked all the way onto the back of him now. Caught up a gap of a couple of seconds, and now he's involved.
I think the stewards might want to have a look at that after the race because we won't have time to issue any penalties now. But if Isaac Price makes a move by making contact like that, oh no, a slide there for Mahle, and that's one. That's almost 2 places lost. The 2 privateers try to work their way through Price all over the curbs.
Yeah. Mahle very lucky not to lose 2 spots there, and that's the danger on the particularly old tyres at this moment. Some of these are getting towards 30 minutes at this point, which you would say usually that's not that old in terms of GT3 tyres, but it still has that sort of an impact, and you can get them sliding, and you can get a little too much heat into them. And all of a sudden, you're losing a whole bunch of time as Price dives down the inside at the final corner. This is the battle for P18 out there. Price still not able to make any progress, but he's following closely in towards turn 1 here, looking for the outside. He's being leaned on, though, by the Audi. My word, Mahle, he really takes things personally, doesn't he, when he's trying to be defensive. He's just like, no, you're not going through. You're not coming through either.
We're into the final minute. This race has flown by. 3rd place is pretty close together. Not quite on each other's bumpers, but they have actually closed a little bit to Wisniewski at the front of your field. So it's Bentley, Audi and Porsche at the front of this race. I think they'll get one more lap. I don't know. It's going to be tight.
It is. So if the clock expires before he gets to the start-finish line, that will be the final lap. What's the situation going to be for Nikodem Wisniewski? 5 seconds coming out of the final turn. Time expires just as he gets to the line. That's the checkered flag. So I believe that is Nikodem Wisniewski taking the race win here at Oschersleben in the endurance race. The Polish driver from Williams Esports takes it, it seems, at the very end there, but we'll have to wait for confirmation, and we'll have to wait to see if this is a cool-down lap or not, because it was very, very close at the line. Looks like they've all lifted out. The race is done now. Let's have a look back to that battle, though. They were very close coming across the line. Lucas Mahle able to hold off Isaac Price, though, as Rudiger a little bit further forward there with P number 16. Max Pfeiffer might have had a bit of a problem towards the end of that event as well, but things getting very close in the lower mid-pack for the end of our endurance race, and things getting close on the time as well, as we were not entirely sure if the race was going to end there and then, but it has, with Nikodem Wisniewski as the winner of round 1.
It was tremendous race. Really enjoyed that that endurance race there. I want to give a quick mention as well to Moritz Lerner. Terrible nightmare first lap, able to get it into the top 10. So a champion's drive there from him, but a well-deserving podium out there on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pretty crazy event from some of the front runners as well. So you see Morrison there down in P9. Great little recovery for him a little bit later on in this event. But we do have to go to our wonderful faces here in the commentary booth. My name's Connery Maddock. Of course, I've been joined by Paul Smith over the course of this evening. A great evening of racing, I should say. We had our decent battles, especially in the mid-pack once again. That seems to be where all the action's at. And, well, if you look at the qualifying times, I think that would have told you that before we even got to the races, with everyone being so close. And, of course, you know, those little mistakes settling in and causing drivers to have to really think on their feet when it comes to negotiating the situation ahead of them. But I think with Oschersleben out of the way now, we've sort of gotten a good baseline for the rest of the season where we can go to tracks where we can potentially see a decent amount more action.
Well, that's it. Next up is the Red Bull Ring, which is, as I've said at the start of the broadcast, one of my personal favourites to race on. So that's going to be interesting because there's plenty of overtaking opportunities there. It's only 7 corners, but a number of those corners you can make moves into. So it's a bit of a wider track as well. I think we're going to see a bit more action in that one, a bit more forceful driving perhaps as well, and a few lunges, shall we say, down into that hairpin at turn number 2 to number 3, depending on how you count it.
Yeah, I think so too. It's going to be crazy, and I remember there was a race in a different league here, a different competition that went to Red Bull Ring on RaceRoom, and Moritz Lerner pulled off one of the most crazy passes in the sort of middle sector triple left-hander that I've ever seen, and completes it coming through the cycling to the right towards the start of the final sector. That was absolutely crazy. So more of that, please, coming into the rounds at the Red Bull Ring. Of course, you got those big drafting zones in particular as well. Maybe not so much coming down the pit straight, but down the 2 back straights. That's going to be where all the action is going to be happening. So I can't wait. I can't wait for it, and I know certainly you can't wait for it either, Paul. But we've gotten an early look of the championship order here, and Wisniewski winning that endurance race, of course. But in the end, I get the feeling though that there are a good amount of drivers that can really go for a championship challenge. I know it's at a very early stage at the moment, and we can't really read into the results of just one event. But if this trend continues throughout the rest of the season, with drivers being as close as they are, all bets are off as to who can come away with the championship at the end.
I mean, we could end up with a showdown with a handful of drivers, all with a chance of winning the championship. It's one swallow doesn't make spring, but certainly those drivers who have had a good start today, who've had a good result today, that gives them a good baseline to work off of. It's a good start to the season. You say, right, I'm in the top 3 or whatever in the championship once all the post-race results are confirmed. But it gives you that foundation to then work off of. There's nothing worse than having a nightmare opening round like Garcia had today. That puts you immediately on the back foot. And with there being only a limited amount of races in this championship as well, you need to be getting points and getting good points to start off with, because you've not got many opportunities to gain it back, because your competitors, they're all going to be up there. It'll take a mistake or an instant or something big for you to be able to jump a few people.
Yeah, it will. That was the name of the game here at Oschersleben. It was mistakes, and mistakes that costed people positions, and of course mistakes in pit stop phases that did the same as well. The case might be a bit different though at the Red Bull Ring, which is what we're going to be heading to in round number 2 of the championship. Congratulations though to all the drivers that took race wins here today. Moritz Lohner in the sprint race of GT3s. We've got Emre Can in GT4s, and of course Wisniewski in the endurance race of the GT3 main event. But that's it from us here at Oschersleben. Thank you very, very much for joining us. I've been Connery Maddock. That's been Mr. Paul Smith, and we'll see you guys for the next event at the Red Bull Ring. Goodbye.